The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. So thrilled to be here with you. It's Friday. I know for different people that means different things, right? For some of us it means the weekend's coming and that there might be 7 minutes to relax. For others of us it means the weekend is coming and other people are going to be taking time off and we're going to have more intensive hours with our children, which can be a wonderful thing but also more taxing. So it depends, but it is Friday. No matter how you look at it, it's Friday. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours talking about how we can be more efficient, more effective working with our children on the autism spectrum. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, or practitioner, we know that that's a large part of where your heart is and how you want to be the strongest possible person on that individual child's team. That's a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. We'll be talking a lot today about things that have to do with ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. And if you're wondering why we talk about ABA so much, it's for two reasons. One, we know that ABA is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And that's a really good reason to talk about it, as well as the fact that when I say that it's effective, I'm talking about that it's effective for all of our kids on the spectrum. That whether you have a child who's very high functioning and just needs a little bit of support, or you have a child who's very profoundly affected that needs a whole array of skills that they need to learn and is facing some challenging behavior that we'd like to diminish, all of the kids on our spectrum, and by the way, everything in between, right, can make progress using the principles of ABA. And I think that that's really exciting. And the other reason why we talk about it so much is because there's a lot to understand. There's a lot of material there. And if we know it's effective for our kids, we need to get as proficient and get as much understanding as we can so that we can be effective and efficient, right? So that's why we talk about it as much as we do. I talk about it as much as I do, not because I'm a BCBA, because I am not. And not because I'm an expert in behavior, because I am not. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a nutritionist, I am not an expert in autism, but I'm a mom. I have a son who was diagnosed at the age of 2.5 with autism, and he is now about to be 9. And I'm so happy to be able to tell you that things in our life they're going really well. That if somebody could have told me on the day that he was diagnosed that we would be at this point at the age of 9, what that would have done for me, even that we could have been where we are. It just brings tears to my eyes. It's Friday. By the time we get to Friday, I'm a weepy mess, right? But I know that we are where we are today, that my son is in completely neurotypical 3rd grade, having completed the STAR testing as of yesterday with absolutely no accommodations whatsoever. He was in the room with his neurotypical peers, doing everything that they were doing with no help or added support whatsoever. And I know that he'll have rocked those test results. And that I'm going to pick him up today from school and he's going to tell me about his day and his friends and what they did on the playground and what he did in lunch bunch and what they talked about. And then he and I are going to go and talk and have some fun. And my world is not going to revolve around autism. That's where we're at. But I can tell you quite honestly that I, for certain, you know how Oprah likes to talk about what do you know for sure? And what I know for sure is that we would not be here today had it not been for really quality ABA therapy. So as a mom, I who has been through that and had the benefit of that, I want to let as many people know that not only is this something that's effective for our kids, but how we can be the best possible people on our children's teams. And as an ex-teacher, I know how important it is for our teachers that are out there watching to be able to connect with these children and have the tools to help them access the curriculum and to diminish challenging behavior so that you're not having to give all your time to that instead of doing what your job is, which is to teach, right? So we do talk about ABA, and I get really excited about it. Now, one of the things about this show is that, I'm sort of your DJ here, right? Sometimes I refer to myself as the good librarian, the librarian who's terribly interested in the things that you want to know about, but hasn't read every book in the library, right? But she knows which aisle to go down and has access to the books. Well, I'm not the expert, but I have access to the experts on your behalf, which is a wonderful thing. In fact, later on today, our guest at 11 o'clock is going to be Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who's a wonderful expert, a BCBA, and can tell us about research. And I usually ask him to come in on Fridays when he's available to talk with us about research, and I'm really excited about some of the things he's going to talk with us about today. So in any case, but he's not the only expert that I have access to. I hope that you will take advantage of my access, ask questions, give suggestions of topics that you would like to have covered on the show. Tell us what you need. I always like to tell you that I gave up mind reading when I became an autism mom, so don't make me guess. Tell me what you need, and I'll hunt it down for you. More and more of you are participating in that. And I will be honest with you, I think you guys are shocked when you guys call in or write in and you get a response. But there are people here who want to help you, and I'm just the first person in a long line of people who want to help you. So let us know what we can do for you. There are lots of ways that you can participate in this conversation. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com and it says live across the top of your screen, you have a little box there on the screen that says your questions. You can type a question there, hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on my screen, and we can have a conversation in that way, which is wonderful. If it says rebroadcast, or you're watching us in any of the other myriads of ways that you can watch the show, there are other ways that you can get in touch with us. And of course, one of the easiest ways is email. And so there's the email address for you on the screen. You can send your email off to us. When we get it, we'll send you back a typewritten response, and we'll also cover it on the next live show. So that's a really good way to get your question answered and give us your suggestions. We love suggestions around here. Because if I can do something to help you, it's so much easier than having to guess, right? There are other ways that you can get in touch with us. You can phone in. We are here Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Pacific Standard Time here in the United States. You can phone us, and if we're here doing the live show, you can even be patched into the live show so that we can be having a conversation. If we're not doing the live show, there will be somebody there. It could be me. It could be, you wouldn't believe who might be answering the phone. But we do have people always standing by who are waiting to hear what you need. You can also Skype in, especially during the live show if you want to Skype in and you're having a good hair day and you have video capability on your computer. We can be talking side by side and having a conversation in that way. So that's a very cool thing to do too. I know that's a little bit easier too for some of you who are not in the United States. It can be less expensive to phone in on Skype. Take advantage of the Skype. We do love Skype. You can also be talking to us on Facebook. I love this because not only then are you talking to us, but you're talking to each other. I'll give you the question of the day here in a few minutes, and I know a lot of you are answering the question of the day on a regular basis, and we love that. And talking to each other and answering each other's questions on Facebook, I get so excited when I see that. And of course, you can tweet to us too. I'm new on the Twitter block, but I'm getting better at it. I'm figuring it out, having my lessons in Twitter. There's always something new to learn, right? I love it. By the way, I mentioned that there are myriads of different ways to be watching the show. You can be watching us on autism-live.com, but you can also be watching us on blip.tv. This is a wonderful place where you can go and see, if you want, you say, oh, I want to watch Tuesday's show, because I know that somebody was on Tuesday talking about toilet training, and I want to watch that show, and you can go and search search dates or topics. You can pause, rewind. It's like having a DVR that already taped it for you. It's a wonderful thing. Same thing on YouTube. If you find YouTube a little bit easier for you, for your purposes, you can be watching us on YouTube. We have our own channel on YouTube. There it is for you. And you can see some of the smaller snippets on YouTube later on today. As I mentioned, we'll have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and either later on today or Monday or over the weekend, that interview will be there so that you can watch that and start and stop. You can also download us. It's a free download on iTunes. With picture. Very soon we're going to have the audio only portion of it so that you can listen to it in the car or while you're walking. But right now you can download the entire thing and be watching those on your computer. And we hope while you're there that you'll leave us a comment. We love your reviews. They have iTunes reviews, and we really, really appreciate them. And you can also be watching us on Ustream as of this week as well. So lots of different ways to watch us, and we hope that you will find the way that's the most convenient for you. And if there's a way that you're not seeing that would be convenient for you, you know of a service that would be helpful to you, please let us know, because we would like for it to be convenient for you. As an autism parent, I know that your time is a premium, right? You know, you can't necessarily watch the live show because that might be when you go to speech or OT, or it's the 2 hours that you actually can get work done, or it's the 2 hours that you're working on something with your child, or the 3 hours that you're working with your child. So we are committed to trying to find ways to get this information to you in a free and easy to use format, so that if it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're not able to sleep because you're worried about everything that's on your plate, and you need some help and support, that you can always find us. And we do talk a lot about ABA, but we talk about the full gamut. We talk about finding the funding, because that's part of this, right? And how to deal with our stress, because that's part of this too. And if we fall apart, then we're not able to do the things that we have to do that make it possible for our child to get ABA. Believe me, that's the long and the short of it, and I have been there, done that. So we have to take care of ourselves, because this is important. This is one of the most important things that we're going to do in our lives, is go on this journey through autism with our child, make the decisions that we have to make, and be able to help them to reach their fullest potential. We know that the outcome for all of our children is going to be different, right? Because all of our children come from a different place and have different circumstances and have different capabilities. But all of them can make progress. All of them. And that's exciting. I get really excited about that. Okay. We like to start every single morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. Oh, the crazy, crazy jargon that we'll meet on this journey through autism, right? And we got to make friends with it. I believe me, it irritated me to no end. And I would say, really, really, it's like learning another language, and you're busy trying to figure out what to do with your child, but you have to make friends with the jargon. It's worth it. It really is. But don't let yourself get overwhelmed. That's why we take one word, one phrase, one anagram a day, and we give you an actual definition, and then we give you a watered down definition that will help you to access it and try to give you a circumstance so that you can begin to understand it. Even then, sometimes it's not going to be crystal clear to you the first time or the first 2 times or 3 times that we'll go over a term, but stick around, because what'll happen, I guarantee you, because this is what happened to me, and this is what I've heard from so many other parents, is you hear the term and you ask, what does it mean? Okay, I get it for a second, and then you don't really get it. It's still this thing that's not completely crystal clear, but then when you see it with your individual child or your student or your client, and you go, oh, that's that. I completely get it now. So don't beat yourself up if you don't already have it all figured out. This is a marathon, not a sprint, right? But today's term, it's one of the things that we talk about endlessly, is reinforcer. What is a reinforcer? I know it sounds like rebar or construction or or undergarments, right? But when we're talking about autism, we're talking about something else entirely. Okay, here is our lengthy actual definition. You ready for this? A stimulus/event delivered contingent on the exhibition of a behavior. I'm doing my my best voiceover dispassionate voice, which increases the probability of that behavior continuing to occur or occurring more often in the future. I got people calling me. For example, if the child enjoys being tickled, tickles may be used as a potential reinforcer for the correct responding or appropriate behavior. Now, as definitions go, this isn't the worst one, right? It isn't as chock full of jargon as some of the other ones go. But you're going, what? I have no idea what exactly this means. Over time, this will start to make great sense. That's when you know you've crossed over to the dark side and when the jargon starts making sense to you. Okay, our working definition is something that acts as a reward for your child and motivates him or her to continue engaging in a particular behavior, good or bad. And this is one of the key things that we have to get our heads wrapped around as quickly as we possibly can. That anything that we do on a regular basis is principle number one for me, for ABA to begin to understand. Any behavior that we do on a regular basis, we only do if it is reinforcing in some way. There has to be some sort of a payoff or we wouldn't keep doing it. You might do something once, right? But if there's not a big enough payoff, you're not going to do it again and again and again. So think about the things that you do every day of your life, day in, day out. The things that you already do, and why do you do them? Just ask yourself, what's my payoff for that? And again, I want to remind all of you that the principles of ABA apply to all of us. They apply to me, they apply to you, they apply to your child with autism, they apply to your child without autism. They apply to your partner, they apply to your mother-in-law. They apply to your boss. They apply to the workers that work for you. These are the principles of behavior, right? So anything that we do time and time again has to be rewarding in some way. Great. That's great information. Because can't we flip that equation on its head and go at it from the other side? That if we want to see a behavior happen more often, we need to make it more reinforcing. We have to find the proper reward that will make us want to do that behavior again and again and again. And if we see a behavior that we don't want to see happen, we have to figure out what's reinforcing about it and make something else more reinforcing and get rid of whatever is reinforcing that behavior we don't want to see. Ooh, if we can get this concept, that's when I see parents get excited. They go, oh, wait a second. That's powerful stuff for us and for our kids. And by the way, science has shown us that this absolutely works with our kids. We want to decrease behaviors that we don't want to see, so we figure out what is reinforcing this behavior. And if we can change that, we can see great results. We can diminish or completely get rid of a behavior. And if there are things that we want our child to be able to do, whether it's learn how to speak, whether it's learn how to demonstrate empathy, whether it's learn how to tie their shoes. If we make it reinforcing enough, we will see progress. You know, I always like to remind everybody, again, outcome depends on so many different things. And I don't ever want to be in a position where it sounds like I'm promising you the sun, the moon, and the stars for absolutely everyone. Everybody comes in with different abilities, but we can see progress. And that's a fabulous thing, a fabulous, fabulous thing. And then once you get progress, then you can move on to other things. You have no idea the things that my child has learned. And there was a day, a bad moment when I didn't know if my child was teachable. I hate admitting that I feel like a complete traitor as a parent and as a teacher admitting that thought crossed my mind. My child might not be teachable. Thank goodness it wasn't the truth. And thank goodness I found really good quality ABA therapy. And I wish that for all of you, that you do, that become a thing that you you are able to see that that's where you got to get to. And I've said this many times in the last couple of weeks, and there aren't a lot of people who are taking me up on it. So I'm throwing this challenge out to you. Whatever is preventing you from getting ABA, whatever it is, would you please take a minute and think, well, what is holding us back? Is it the money? Is it the time? Is it your fear? Is it you don't know where to go? What is it exactly? Is it your fear for the rest of your family? Do you feel like your house isn't set up for it? What is it? Please write to me and tell me what's holding you up. And I promise you, we'll try to sort it out with you. Because I know that there is somebody out there, yes, I'm talking to you, that feels like, I can't do this. This isn't there for me. And I really don't think that that's the case anymore. I think that there are so many different ways, but let's try to work it out. Please don't try to think that it's all you and it's on you. Please ask for help, and I'll line people up and we'll sort it out. We'll figure it out as best as we can. Okay, so there's our jargon of the day, reinforcer. It's something we're going to talk about a lot on this show today and every day, about finding what is reinforcing for your child, because it's very specific, child specific. Sometimes it's task specific, right? Because what reinforces one thing does not reinforce something else. But just know that when we find what actually reinforces a behavior, ooh, it's an exciting thing on both sides, whether it's good or bad. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. The question of the day, we love it that you guys are participating in such a wonderful way with this, and a lot of you answered on Facebook. More and more of you are answering it on Twitter. We enjoy that too, and you can write in, call in, Skype in, and let us know. And I love how you support each other. Really, really enjoy that. Our question for today is, what skill is your child having a hard time learning? You know, because there are some things that are going to come easier to your child and other things that are going to become harder. And we talk from time to time about what to do when something is difficult, that we don't give up on it. Sometimes you might put it on hold for a while and say, we're not quite there. Sometimes you have to go back and work on a prerequisite and say, you know, this child can't do this because of X, Y, and Z. Perfect example. You know, my son had 5 years of ABA therapy from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders in my home, the best of all possible circumstances. And believe me, if I could give that to every single one of you, I would. There are lots of different ways to get ABA, though, and as I said, if something's holding you up, write to me. Let's figure it out. But now he's graduated from his program, but I still do the principles of ABA in my home, and I still use the skills program to work on individual things that I want to work on with him at home. And I mentioned that the last couple of weeks we had been revisiting shoe tying, because sometimes I am not the brightest parent that there is, and I will admit that freely. And we learned shoe tying a couple of years ago, and then Mommy went and bought a bunch of shoes that had Velcro. But then the most recent pair of shoes that he wanted were tie shoes. And in the back of my head, I was like, you know, that's probably a good idea, because we haven't done this in a very long time. And in fact, it appeared that the skill was completely gone, because we need to maintain things, right? And so anyway, we've been working on the shoe tying. The shoe tying, I'm so pleased, is so happy and back. And this morning, he even was double knotting them himself. I was so happy, and he was thrilled. But now, you know, the other thing that's been the big that has been the other skill that we've worked on from time to time, and then put it on hold, and then realized we had to go back and work on some other things, but it's way time, but it scares the you-know-what's out of me, is riding the bicycle without the training wheels. Oh my goodness, right? And I'll be honest with you, it's a hard thing for me, because it's hard physically, and there's a lot of fear involved and all the things that come with that, but it's way past time. He's about to be 9, and he needs to be riding his bicycle. Now, I will tell you that we had worked on it and put it on hold for a bunch of different reasons, and then worked on it again, and that was part of how we realized that my son was having a visual motor issue, and so we put it on hold to work on the visual motor issue. That has now improved greatly enough. I'm taking him tomorrow for his follow-up with the developmental ophthalmologist person. But I think we are at the point where it is time to revisit. And I pumped up the bicycle tires the other day, sharpening my pencils, getting everything in order so that we can do this. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the shoe tying, which is remind myself to take it one little thing at a time and to chain, to not take the whole task and hope that it's like throwing the kid in the deep end of the pool and they'll just swim, because that is not my child, as it is not a lot of your children, I'm sure. So we're going to work on it one little skill at a time, which is how we worked on it before. But I always had therapists helping me before. I've done it a little bit on my own, and it's intimidating to me, I'm going to be honest with you. But I'm hoping that in the coming weeks, I'm going to be able to report back to you that my child and I are riding our bikes together. That's really a big goal that I have for this summer. But I'd love to hear from you. What skill is your child having a hard time learning? It's frustrating sometimes, right? Because your child will fly through one skill and you go, oh, this is fabulous. But every once in a while, you hit a brick wall. And it's important to look at all the circumstances and say, why are we hitting a brick wall? It's important to talk to the BCBA that you're working with on your case about why are we hitting a brick wall. It's why we chart progress, because we never want to, the definition of insanity, right, is to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result, right? And sometimes we just need to tweak one little thing. When I think back to when we were working on the bike and it just wasn't gelling. We would go back, work on a prerequisite, come back, wasn't working. And really it was because visually he was not in a place where he could focus. So, because his eyes the muscles weren't holding his eye in a place. So of course he was tipping over. It made total sense. And sometimes you got to get in there and kind of look at things and go, why? Why are we having such a hard time with this skill? And then you can tweak the little thing and have success. So that's going to be my story this summer. But I want to know from you, what is your child having a hard time learning? Because maybe while we've got Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in here this afternoon, we could be talking about some things to look at. Okay, we also always have a topic of the day. Our topic today, as it has been all week long, is ABA for beginners. And doesn't matter where you are on this journey, whether you're just starting out, whether you're just getting a diagnosis, just got the diagnosis, you've been doing ABA for a year, you've been doing ABA for 3 years, or you had ABA and you graduated from ABA and you're 6 years down the road, it's still great to go back to basics. I love that one of our guests was saying that in the course of ABA, and if you're new to the show, you probably don't know, but for those of you who've been watching, ABA was not invented for autism at all. This is an age-old science that happens to work with our children, but it was not invented for autism. And so I always like to remind all of us, including myself, that the principles of ABA work for all of us. It's a wonderful thing. So even if autism is not a part of your life anymore, your child, is doing just fine, it's still really good for us. And as a guest reminded us that somebody at some point had said, this is a wonderful thing that could make the world better. Make the world a better place. I kind of want to crochet that onto a pillow. The ABA can make the world a better place because it's true. I think I have some better relationships and better interactions with friends and family members for just by virtue of what I've learned as a parent with my child about ABA. So always useful to go back to basics and remind ourselves, because I shared earlier in the week that I made some mistakes this week. I did some things that were not what I know about ABA, but still with the old instinct of nag. I love to nag. It's my go-to. I admit it freely, a big fault. And it doesn't work. I could use the principles of ABA or I could nag, and sometimes I just choose to nag. In any case, our not good, not effective, and I want to be efficient and effective, are today some of the topics that we're going to cover. It's Friday, so we always give you an academic tip. I'm really excited about that today. We generally do a myth of the day because there are so many myths surrounding autism and ABA. And of course, it's Friday. So at 11 o'clock, research with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. It's going to be a big day. lots of exciting things to talk about, but most importantly, your input. So give us a call, give us a Skype, email us, or just write your question into the forum before you, and we'll start the conversation. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to give you the academic tip of the week. So stick with us.
Here I stand, a man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, to celebrate you is greater now that I can. You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I'm awe of and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up card all of you is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering love and commitments to helping others in need recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with Cardi wasn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful with what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I'm catching up on my getting things up here for you. We are going to talk about the academic tip of the day. And normally I have a thing to show you. Here it is. It's Friday, so I'm having gremlins today. So anyway, there we go. Our academic tip for the day is teaching the time of day and daily activities. This is something that we can be working on with a child of any age, and yet it's something that is really going to be targeted in kindergarten, right? So what we see, depending on, let's say that you have a child who is 4 years old and the child is or is not going to preschool, but you're going to try to go to kindergarten next year. And I think it's really important that we work on things that are age appropriate always, right? You never want to be trying to teach a preschooler long division getting ready for 4th grade, right? But there are some things that we kind of want to give our kids a head start in, give them, that recipe for success, that leg up, so that they're going to, let's talk about it this way. If once they go to the classroom, there's all that sensory stuff that's going to go on in the classroom, right? And if you're hearing something and this is true for all of us, not just our kids on the spectrum. If you go into a huge lecture hall and there's a carnival going on, right? And somebody's going to teach you quantum physics for the first time and you've never heard anything about quantum physics, it's going to be much harder for you to learn with all of this stuff going on, right? However, if you had done a class in quantum physics before, so you had a basic understanding of quantum physics, and then you came into the carnival and somebody said, we're going to be here and we're going to talk about quantum physics, you would understand much more of it and get much further in the lesson having had a little bit of some sort of precursor thing before you came into the class. You would be able to more effectively, hopefully, tune out some of the carnival. It would still be a distraction, but at least you would be able to follow enough of the conversation. I love all these smartphones that we have. Aren't they wonderful? And I love my little earpiece for my smartphone. But what I'm noticing is the ability to converse with people and understand what they're saying is going completely down the toilet. It could just be my earpiece, but the last 2 days I tried to have conversations with people on the phone, and I could hear I could hear words, but I couldn't make them out. So I was having to hear like every fourth word and put the sentence together, and they were having to do the same thing. I don't know how we got to this. It's like two tin cans with a string that we're talking to each other. But you know, the reality is that sometimes that's what it's like for our kids. And you know how when you're trying to hear the conversation and you go, okay, it's my friend Julie and she's talking about catering. I know she's getting ready to have a big, 50th birthday party for her husband. So when she starts saying a word, I'm going through the categories and picking out words and figuring out what she's saying on the phone. It's like that for our kids, only they don't have the reference points that we do. So we got to make it as easy as possible for them, because a kindergarten classroom, sensory-wise, is about the equivalent of a carnival, right? There's a lot of kids there. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of colors, things to pay attention to, things that are aversive, things that are preferred, right? A lot going on there. So we want to give them a leg up and introduce topics a little bit before they get there. We're not going to be teaching a 1-year-old how, the days of the month on the calendar if they're behind in other skills, right? But it's not unusual or inappropriate to be teaching a 4-year-old things to be using as a 5-year-old in the classroom, to give them that precursor. Likewise, you may have a child who's 8 or 9 or even 12 who still is having difficulties with understanding what time of day it is and what kinds of activities that we do at different times of the day. So really important for us, we've talked before, and in a little while we're going to watch this week's The A Word, and they're talking about visual schedules. There's so many different reasons why our children need to know the calendar and why different events happen at different times of the day. But one of the extra payoffs is that it's going to help them to negotiate their world, right? So that if a child understands that, this is the clock and this is what time you get up, and it's around this time in the morning that we have breakfast, and they may already know and be aware of the fact, they may already be aware of the fact that these kinds of things happen in a certain order, and we can use that to help them to understand, okay, but this is the representation of it on the clock, so that they find it very reinforcing, honestly, because it helps them to take charge of their day. So we're pairing things that already happen with them and saying, okay, here's when it happens on the clock. It's going to be useful to us, and it's going to help them because they're going to know what's happening. I always like to say that when you're driving in your car and going someplace and somebody else is holding the directions, we all have different ways that we like to get the directions, right? I've shared before that my husband, he wants to know the next 3 things on the list. I don't want to know the next 3 things on the list. I want to know the next one, and I want to know the full concept, right? I have friends that they, look at it in different ways. We all have our preferences. So do our kids. But the main through line is that for most of us, we want to have an idea of what's happening. We don't want somebody just springing on us and say, oh, now we're going to turn left. Really? I'm not prepared. It brings up anxiety. It brings up anger. When I'm driving in the car with my husband and he wants to know the next 3 things, and he gets crabby if I don't tell him the next 3 things, and I get crabby if he tells me too many things at once, right? So it's all a matter of what works for us individually, but we all like to have an idea. Nobody likes to just have things sprung on them. Nobody likes that. And for a child who doesn't have functional communication skills, that can easily lead to a tantrum and or a meltdown. So giving them every opportunity to understand, okay, here's a clock, here are some activities that we do. Lots of fun ways that we can teach this for our kids too, and use very visual ways of doing it. We got a clock from the 99-cent store that we still have it, but it was literally that sort of foam felt stuff, and it had the 2 hands and the big numbers, and it was held together basically with a brad, but we could change the times on the clock. And we took pictures of different events that we do during the day and started with the things that were the most reinforcing to my son. And so we started being able to pair them with, so here's the picture of you having playtime with your friend. And so we would put on the clock, well, that's at this time. And then he would look at the real clock and see, and we had a place on the wall where we could Velcro these to the wall, that here's the clock and here's the picture, so that you can look at these. And when the real clock gets to this, that's when you get to go to the park and have a play date with Jacob. Very reinforcing to him, and he'd be standing there, he didn't have a watch, but you know what I mean? He'd be like, look, it's time. It's my time now. We get to go and do this, that, and the other thing. We want to make sure that we include things that happen every day, things like breakfast and lunch and dinner. While we're working on these and reinforcing it with the clock, we're also showing them that, here are these routines using the words breakfast and lunch and dinner, or whatever it is that you're calling it. You can change it for yourself, but pairing these things all together, and I think when it's things that they find exciting first and then things that happen in their everyday second, what happens is it's reinforcing to most of our children. Now, what do you do if that's not reinforcing to the child at all? Then you got to pair it with something that is reinforcing. We're constantly using praise and those kinds of things, but if that's not getting it done, if that's not enough reinforcement, remember, it's only reinforcing if it actually increases the likelihood of the behavior. If it doesn't, it's not reinforcing. Then you got to pair it with something else that is reinforcing. So always have to remember that make it fun, make it exciting, but make it specifically reinforcing to the specific child. So teaching the time of day and activities that happen in the day are going to help prepare your child for kindergarten. Woohoo, because that is a skill that they're going to work on in kindergarten. It's one of the standards in pretty much anywhere in the world. But it's also going to help your child. It may even decrease some challenging behavior. It's going to help you to be able to later on be able to have your child's visual schedule for the day, if that's something that not all children need it, but a lot of children do really well with a visual schedule for the day. And you can say, okay, so first your therapist is going to come, and then we're going to have lunch, and later on at this time, we're going to go play in the sandbox, and at 4 o'clock, this is you playing with your trucks, and then we're having dinner with grandma, right? So that they can see. And you'll see later on with Jack Riley that even in a small way, they're starting to do this with him, so that he understands that things come and go, and he's starting to understand transitions, and that good stuff is coming. And just because something is difficult in the moment doesn't mean that that's where we're going to be stuck all day, right? If I told you, well, here's today, and I don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to start out, and you're going to work really hard, and I don't know if you're going to get anything good that's going to happen. You'd be like, really? Well, am I going to get a break? I don't know. I'm not going to tell you until right before. You're not going to be as productive, right? Our kids won't be either. So this is going to help them in a lot of different areas. So take the time to work on pairing together the time of day with activities. It'll be well worth it. All right, let's take a break, and when we come back, we have the IEP tip for the week. It's IEP season still. I know a lot of you have already done your IEPs and are thinking about getting them signed, but it's still, for many of you, you're still in the process of it, so we have our weekly IEP tip. Stick with us, and we'll be back in just a minute.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. What's an institution? A hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests. I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of theautspot.com. Theautspot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. In fact, we just saw a spot for the Autspot. We're going to have Greg from the Autspot with us on Tuesday at 11 o'clock and talking to him. This is a wonderful site. If you haven't been to it, the Autspot, it's kind of like Facebook for autism. And there are lots of different forums that I'm always saying to you guys, it's really beneficial to have a local support group and a more global support group. And there are lots of different places where you can find that. And it's possible on the Autspot to find both there in the same place because they have forums for different topics. So a wonderful resource. And I know particularly for our older kids that are on the spectrum, maybe on the Asperger ends of things, that I don't have a child at that age yet. Mine's about to be 9, but I'm told that a lot of young people with autism are starting to meet on the Autspot and different forums to talk to each other about the kinds of things that they go through. That's an awesome thing. That's an awesome opportunity for our kids. So whether you're a parent or, I believe there's even forums for teachers as well on the Autspot. Check it out. I really encourage you to check it out. Okay, it's time for IEP tip though. And, people have IEPs at different times of the year. A lot of people though, this is IEP season for April and May, towards the end of the school year. It tends to be when a lot of the IEPs happen. Not always though. For those of you who are new to the program and don't have school-age children yet, an IEP is an individualized education plan. If your child has an autism spectrum diagnosis, it's something that your child is entitled to. It means that a group of people will be assembled who are going to, more than likely, your child is entitled to an assessment. Then each person might want to do a different assessment, and then sit down with you and all of the administrators, the principal, and the whole team will get together and they'll present their findings from their assessment, their evaluation of where they think your child is, where your child needs to get in the school year. They will make recommendations of here's what we think are appropriate goals for your child. And then they will put that all together in one document, which becomes your child's IEP, your individualized educational plan. It should be the roadmap for how everybody is going to teach your child for the next school year. And at that point, the school makes an offer of what they call FAPE, F-A-P-E, which stands for Free Appropriate Public Education. And you have the ability as a parent to accept that, to accept part of it, or to say, I reject the entire thing, and then you start a negotiation, which could lead to moderation and even legal due process. If you completely disagree. And these are all terms that we talk about from time to time. We include them in our jargon of the day because, woo, education, jargon intensive. Yes, as a former teacher, I still, it's overwhelming to me. In any case, the time surrounding, I was saying all last month, I was like, April, it's taxes, it's IEP season, it's, Autism Awareness Month, there's so much going on, my head's spinning. And it can be a very intensive month, shall we say. And you're trying to get ready for that IEP, and that means something different to all of us. For my first IEP with my son, I had been as a teacher on the other side for much older kids, on the other side of the table at IEP meetings, and had no concept of how stressful it is for the parent, because you don't necessarily know all the players, and you don't know who. 99% of the people usually at an IEP meeting are going to be people who really are interested in helping your child. But, there's always that 1%, right, that can make the whole works gum up. And a lot of the things that are talked about in the IEP meeting, although nobody is allowed to talk about a dollar sign, and legally no one is allowed to talk about the dollar sign, it's the underwriting current for everybody, right? It's the elephant in the room. So, because the kinds of things they're going to offer you are going to cost them money. And anytime there's money, there's going to be different motives going on. So my whole thing as a parent and as a former teacher is, how can you walk into that meeting and be as prepared as you possibly can? So today's tip is about when they send you, and they will send you, usually they send it home with your child, but they'll double check to make sure that you got it, right? An invitation to attend an IEP meeting, and it'll say it's on this date. Sometimes they'll send home a thing saying, here are the assessments that we want to do, and we need you to sign off on these as well. So they'll send the date to you, and by the way, if that date doesn't work for you, you can request a different date. But and I'm not a lawyer, but in my humble opinion, do not allow them to have the IEP meeting without you, ever. That is my opinion completely, but you always are a member of your child's IEP team. Always. And you have your right to that. And you never, in my opinion, want to relinquish that in any way. I have heard of many instances where the school will say, you don't have to be there. We can just meet without you. And I'm sure that they can. And if you sign off and say, I cannot attend, they absolutely will. Don't allow that, in my humble opinion, as a person who is not a lawyer. Be a part of your child's team always, and say, I am not available on this date. I could be available on these 3 dates. But I want to be there, and make that very clear, make that in writing. It can be via email to make it in writing. But let's say that you get the date and you agree with the date and you say, I can be there. It's a really good time at that point, when you respond and you sign off the thing and send it back, to send an email to whoever the person is that you speak to the most, and say a couple of different things. I always tell you, say, I'm coming. Tell them if you're bringing anybody with you, right? And because they need to make arrangements for the size of the room. And by the way, you can bring whoever you want. You don't need to bring other people, but if you want to bring a lawyer, you can. You need to let them know, though. If you want to bring an advocate, you can. If you want to bring your mother-in-law's hairdresser, I don't know why you would, but you're allowed to bring whoever you want. If you want to bring a neighborhood action group with you, you can. I wouldn't advise doing that unless you're several meetings down the road and not getting the kind of treatment that you want. But let them know who you're bringing, so they have an expectation of how many people and how many chairs. And let them know in writing at that time that you are going to be tape recording. So essential. So essential. You have to give them, in some states, 24 hours, in some states, 48 hours. So just send it when you've signed the thing and you're sending that back. Also send the email saying, just letting you know that I'm coming on this date. Excuse me, I'm bringing my brother-in-law, Bert, and I'm tape recording. Excuse me, it means that they will also have a tape recorder in the room. That's fine, but it also means that everyone should be on their best behavior, including you, right? You're going to, at some time in your IEP over the years, you're going to want to yell at someone. And that's a terrible thing, and I'm laughing at myself because maybe you won't, but everybody I know ever and have talked to at some point has wanted to yell at somebody. If you don't ever, bless you, and that's a wonderful thing, and I hope that spreads to the rest of us. And can I tell you that most of we have been so fortunate, and I love my son's school, and I love my son's principal, and I love his teachers, but still, from time to time, I've wanted to yell. And, you may very well want to, and you're going to not, because the tape recorder is running and it's not going to be beneficial. Yelling is not going to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish, right? And it also means that they're not going to be yelling and everybody's going to behave. And they're not going to say, you know, I've heard some things that people have said in IEP meetings, and I go, seriously? Are you kidding me? That actually came out of somebody's mouth. And the next thing I say is, was there a tape recorder running? And usually not, because when there isn't a tape recorder, anything could happen. But when there is a tape recorder, those kinds of things just don't happen. And guess what? If they do, it's time to partay. Because if somebody says something that is completely inappropriate while the tape recorder is running, you know, do the happy dance, because it means that the IEP is going to get much easier. Trust me on this. You might have to consult with a lawyer to make it happen, but it will be much easier if somebody makes a mistake. So I know in the moment you go, somebody's saying this and it's inappropriate, and just go, think to yourself in the back of your head, do the happy finger dance, because now your child is going to get exactly what they should have gotten without a big fight because somebody said something inappropriate. Okay. But that's not the IEP tip for today. The IEP tip for today is that when you send that email back saying, I'm coming, I'm bringing this person, I'm tape recording, I would like to have all of the reports that are going to be delivered at least 48 hours prior to the meeting. Just send it off with the agreement saying that you're coming to the meeting. Because otherwise, what's going to happen is you get to this meeting and there's, you know, 7 or 15 people sitting there, and everybody goes around and introduces themselves, and then they start and go, okay, well, you know, I'm the speech and language pathologist, and we assessed your child on this and so day with this and so test, and your child tested here for this and here for that, and da-da-da-da-da-da, and our recommendation is that your child get a half an hour of speech twice a week, and to be, you know, done here, and here are the goals, and they'll want to read through the different goals, right? And that's the first person. And then they go, okay, you know, so I am the OT, and, you know, your child was assessed on this day, and you're going around the table. And if you're hearing all of this for the first time, I don't know anybody that wouldn't find that overwhelming. And you've got all this emotion and all this fear, and is this right? And I don't know, does this make sense? And then, so, you know, however many of them will go around the table and they'll go, okay, it's your turn. Are there any goals that you would like to add, or any questions you would, and really? And it's, you know, you're an hour and a half into the meeting now, and everybody's like, so we have exactly 45 seconds left of the meeting before everybody needs to disband. Was there anything you wanted to ask about? And I don't know a person who could hear all of that fresh and have something to add in that moment. I don't know that person. It's unrealistic. And you do have it within your rights to ask for all of that stuff, for them to email it to you 48 hours in advance, so you can sit down in the leisure of your home without people staring at you to look at it and go, oh, okay, this makes sense, but you know what's missing here? I'd like to add this goal. So ask for all of the assessments, all of the evaluations, all of the goals, 48 hours, or even more if you want, but 48 hours I think is pretty reasonable. If they aren't ready with it 48 hours in advance, and you told them weeks in advance that you want it, then that's something you want to make sure you say into the tape recorder. And I have had parents report back to me that they asked for it and didn't get it, and then set it into the tape recorder and said, I'm here for the scheduled meeting, and I did request in writing to have these assessments. They were not available, so I'm at a distinct disadvantage here, so we'll need to meet again. You know, I will look this over and we'll need to meet again. In any case, whether you are having a second meeting or you've looked it all over 48 hours in advance and you agree with it or not, my advice always to you, and anytime we talk to a lawyer, and by the way, we're having Valerie Vanneman on next Wednesday, who's a wonderful special education lawyer. Anything I've ever heard from any lawyer has been, do not sign there. Take it home, read it over. That it's really important to do that. You can give it back to them the next morning, but always take it home. You will be asked to sign that you were in attendance. You can do that, but take it home, read it over, do yourself a favor, and do that, because otherwise mistakes are made, and then there's tears, and oof, it's not good. You don't want that. All right. So there's your IEP tip for the day. Ask for those assessments beforehand. It is time to talk about the A word. This is this lovely documentary, ongoing documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I just love this, you guys. And if you watch, you know that I do. They're following a little boy, Jack Riley, who he's just about to turn 3 at this point in the series where we're watching. Diagnosed a little after the age of 2 with autism. He's been having ABA therapy for about 6 months at this point. He has made tremendous progress. He is speaking in sentences. He's labeling things, tacting, doing all kinds of interesting things, and making better eye contact. So lots and lots of progress, right? But we know that it's not a straight trajectory, right? You're going to hit bumps in the road. And in last week's episode, Jack Riley had started biting, seemingly out of nowhere. Jack Riley was biting, and so they did an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, and came up with a behavior intervention plan. And we get to see this week what the behavior intervention plan is, what the plan of attack is, and how it's working. So take a look, and we'll talk about it on the other side. This is the A word.
Have fun.
Okay, bye.
I take it. I take it. Oh. He's starting to sit a little bit longer, and he gets the idea, okay, if I sit, get my stickers, then I can go. This is actually a 10 token board, but right now he's only on 5 right now, but eventually we'll move him up to 10. It's a good way for him to visually see, that there is an end, like once I get all the board filled up with stickers, then I can leave.
Jessica does a preference assessment to see what Jack Riley wants to work for before she begins her first trial.
Okay, what do you want, pancakes or do you want bubbles? Bubbles. Say I want pancakes. Okay. Do you want pancakes or bubbles? Pancakes. Pancakes? Say I want pancakes. Want pancakes. Okay, sounds good. What's your dad's name? Mike. Mike, good job. Here you go. Now put the J on. Push the J on. Put the J. J. Good job. Nice job. When's your birthday? December 15th. December 15th. Good job. How old are you? 2. Nice. Can you show me the fingers? 2. 2. Good job. Here you go. What's your mom's name? Cheryl. Cheryl. Very good. Whoops. Whoops. Here you go. Put another one on there. Where does the K go? Good job. What does it say? Jack. Say Riley. Riley. There you go. All done. Here you go. It's good. Okay, go play. See you later. What? Here, you gonna bring the tractor? Elbows. The pig, yeah, it is a pig. Wait.
He's lining up the dinosaurs in a row.
Okay, buddy.
Lining up objects is associated with autism because it shows that the child doesn't know how to appropriately play with toys. This is why Jack Riley's therapists teach play skills, so you can learn how to learn. Playing is learning through imitation, and it also helps develop communication skills. This is why the behavior is redirected.
Let's make a bridge for the dinosaurs. Are they friends? Should we walk? Let's walk. Let's walk. Yay! Let's go play. What else can we do? Jack, what is this? It's Is it this way? Is it this? It's a this way? Is it this way? Is it a bridge? Did you make a bridge? It's a bridge. Can the dinosaur walk on the bridge? Walk on the bridge?
Walk.
Can you make the dinosaur walk? You do it.
Dinosaur walk.
Jack Riley, do it. Make him walk. Walk. Here, slide down. Slide. Whee! Ready? I want to do it. Ready? Whee!
Sometimes lining up toys can be appropriate play. Jack Riley lines up his blocks to build a bridge. What makes lining up toys an indicator for autism is when the behavior is limited and is the only way the child interacts with the objects.
That's more creative, Jack. At clinic, Sabrina suggested to make a visual schedule because he's been having a hard time walking outside. So look, what's this first? There's Dad, there's you, there's Miss Shireen. You're holding hands. Like you're walking on the sidewalk, holding hands. And then when you get to the grass, you stop. You stop.
You stop.
Yep. You stop. And then what do you get to do? You get to run on the
Grass.
Say run on the grass. Good job. The end. But yeah, so we were gonna show him like along the way as every step, like you walk out, you hold hand, and emphasize holding hands.
Okay.
You hear you guys walking the sidewalk holding hands, and then the next picture is you guys stopping in front of the grass,
Okay.
still holding hands,
Okay.
and then his reward is
You get to play.
you get to play on the grass. And he got the concept, early idea. Anyway, we'll see if put into play, will he get it? But I'm sure he'll get it.
He'll get it. That.
Yeah.
Having a destination was the biggest thing for him. Like
Yeah.
knowing what the
Yeah, I think-
goal was.
I think before you say come here, and he thinks it's over. And yesterday he'd be playing, and Cheryl would say come here, and he would run down, and then she'd whisper, you want to go to the grass? And he just was.
Good.
I think it's all been about, now we have to go in every time we call him.
Or a tantrum he has, or really a lot of his bad behaviors, because he doesn't know.
What do you have to do first?
Remember, what are you gonna do first though?
Hold what?
You wanna do it or you want me to do it?
Hold what?
Since he sees your picture. maybe
Hold
that's for today.
hands. Go hold hands with Dad, like the picture.
Good.
All right.
Remember like yesterday.
15, 16, 17, 18, 19.
See, we still hold hands.
And
we
you
still hold hands. Stop.
Right?
And we still hold hands.
Where do you guys know that?
Right here, and then we made a mask.
Yeah, then we stop and make him ask.
Can you say, I want to play on the grass? Okay, go.
Yay!
Go!
Have you hugged your tree today? You gonna kiss it too? Tree hugger and a tree.
Come here.
Come here.
Let's go, girls.
Yay! Uh-oh, wet butt. Wet butt. Hey, do you want stairs or grass?
Grass.
Okay, stay with Mom. 10 steps. 10 steps. Ready?
1, 2,
3. Stay with me.
10 steps.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
What's
6,
that?
7,
Grass.
8, 9,
2.
10. You want grass?
Grass.
Okay, go.
Using a visual schedule has helped Jack Riley a lot on outings because he can anticipate what will happen next. And unlike last week, there has been no aggression or biting. Whether it's a token board or a visual schedule, having items JR can see helps him a lot to know what's happening next, and therefore be a lot less anxious.
What do you want? You want grass or do you want... Okay, go play. Yay!
Welcome back. That was the A word. I absolutely love this series. And I always say to you guys, go back and watch early episodes, but especially it's so great. I really wish we had done this week's show, last week's episode and this week's episode, because it's the wonderful bookends that last week we saw that, the therapist showed up and there was a lot of emotion that was happening in the household, a lot of frustration, and the dad was saying, I don't know what happened, and I don't know what to do, go, and our child is biting now, and I literally don't know what to do, and he's having emotion around it, and we can all relate to that, right? And feeling helpless and saying, we knew how to handle this, but I don't know how to do the rules of ABA with this. He's like, all of a sudden, this biting is coming up, and I'm a little bit lost, and you can see it, that he's frustrated. And I love that, the therapist does the FBA, and she's looking at and they come up with a plan. She looks at the behavior, looks at the before, looks at the after, looks at when it's happening and what else is on board, and they come up with the plan. And it's just interesting to me and exciting to me to see how empowered the dad becomes that quickly. And this dad, I can't say enough good things about this family, that they have allowed us to peek in on what's happening. We all know if you're doing ABA at home, it's already intrusive, right? You got people tramping through your house. It's a wonderful thing. For those of you who haven't been able to start it and you're thinking, really, you would, this is life-changing, and you're complaining about the fact that there's strangers going through your house. Yes, it's hard. It's hard because your doors are open, your life is open. And then to have a camera on top of that, it's another level of courage, just courage. And especially because there are going to be days when we don't get this right. And there are going to be days when we're frustrated. There are going to be days when our hope is diminished, right? Because we're human beings. But I love being able to see the arc. That we're not just seeing, one little thing and going, well, that's what it is. So we get to see Dad frustrated last week, and then we get to see Dad empowered this week. How thrilled he is to look. It makes sense to him, right? Oh, we're going to show him pictures, and we're going to reward him. And that Dad's already had some time to look at it, and it says, we were looking at this behavior, because what was happening was that he was biting. He bit Mom on the arm and was trying to bite because he didn't want to walk down the sidewalk. He wanted to play on the grass. And he didn't have the ability to say, I want to walk on the grass. So they're teaching him to say, I want to walk on the grass. They're making sure that they reinforce that, right? Our jargon term for the day, by letting him have access to the grass when he asks for it, right? They're blocking. Initially, last week, they were blocking to make sure that he couldn't bite them. They're giving him a visual schedule, because you hear them both say, both the mom and the dad say, that he needs to see the end. That he needs to see, that Mom says it's really important for him to know what the goal is. And Dad says, yes, because before, when something was happening, he couldn't see, and he thought he was going to have to go back in. Because honestly, that's what they were doing. And that is what we all do as parents, left to our own devices. And I don't mean to make that sound bad, because I think, as parents, we're sharp. But you know what? Autism doesn't come with an instruction manual, right? And so certainly, if you talk to most parents and say, oh, well, we were out walking on the sidewalk and the child bit us, that was the end of his playtime. We went back inside because he was trying to bite us. There's a certain amount of that makes sense, right? It's not like they picked some weird, bizarre thing to do in the face of this. However, what it said to Jack Riley was that, I'm not going to get my time outside. I'm not going to get my grass time. And, so this is miserable. I don't want to do the thing you're asking me to do, which is walk down the sidewalk, because I'm not going to get the grass for it, right? So we don't have a child who's progressing. And they were picking him up if he would bite and taking him inside. And we all have that sort of, I need to teach a lesson. I need to, for lack of a better word, punish. But the truth is the science has shown us, and we see in this circumstance, the biting wasn't stopping. So what were our choices? That he never ever went for a walk, and he never learned how to walk down the sidewalk and appropriately ask for a break? We can't have that, right? So this makes much more sense, and how different physically the dad is now as a result of having this intervention. And he didn't have to come up with it on his own. And that's a really important part of this, you guys. I'm all the time saying to you how important it is to be working with a BCBA, because we're tired as parents, right? And we're in the thick of it, and we're in the emotion of it. And Dad even shared last week, he's like, we'll be doing so good and we make so much progress, and I get all full of hope. And then something like this happens, and I think to myself, oh no, are we back to day one of diagnosis, where my son's never going to be able to go on a date, and my son's never going to be able to hold a job, my son's never going to play on the football team? Those fears and it's different for all of us, right? Because it may not be the football team for you, but it might be something else. And then that makes it harder for us to see the forest for the trees, right? It's just a part of it. But in any case, also want to talk about, you saw the visual schedule there, which is helping him to know when to be able to transition, when it's going to be over, and that it's worth it to work for this, because she gave him the choice, right? The bubbles or the pancakes. And did you notice she asked him more than once? We're really, when we do a preference assessment for a reinforcer, we're really supposed to be asking at least twice. And there was the perfect example of why. She says, do you want the bubbles or the pancakes? And he says bubbles. And she says, okay. And she's starting to put away, but she goes, do you want the bubbles or the pancake? He goes, pancakes. And so she asks him the third time, he says pancakes. Now she knows, okay, he wants to work for the pancakes. The pancakes are going to be his reinforcer. He's going to get 5 stickers. Eventually it's going to be 6, and then 7 and 8 and 9 and 10. But right now it's 5 stickers. He gets 5 stickers and he gets some pancake. Woohoo! Or he could have bubbles or something else, but the pancake is the reinforcer, our jargon for the day. But there were other reinforcers that were in there. The grass becomes the reinforcer. He wants to play on the grass. And so they say, okay, and they make this whole visual representation for him of, you're gonna hold hands with dad, you're gonna stop, you're gonna ask for the grass, you get to play on the grass. And so the grass becomes the reinforcer. Then he gets that and he's thrilled. The little, everybody cheers, that's reinforcement too, but he gets to play on the grass. And then the mom says, okay, you want the grass? He goes, want more grass? And she says, okay, then you gotta walk with me 10 steps. And he doesn't wanna do that, right? He says, want more grass. He wants it immediately, right? And she's like, you gotta walk with me. And she starts to count 1, 2, 3, but he steps onto the grass, so she starts over. And he's protesting, he's saying, want more grass. And that's great that he's saying it, but she's not giving into that and saying, Jack Riley, in a minute we're gonna do that. She's making him walk. Anyway, he's not getting to escape the walking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and she's making it fun. So he says 10, and she asks him again, do you want grass? Want grass? And he gets to run on it. So the grass is the reinforcer for the compliance of doing the walking. So what he's learning, instead of when you mess up, you lose your ability to play on the grass, he's learning when you do what we ask you to do, you get to play on the grass, which is much easier to learn. It's easier to learn a positive than it is to learn a negative, right? But I love how empowering it is for this family, and the biting has stopped. Here's a true hallmark of, is it working? Because if the challenge in behavior is stopping, then we're getting progress. So wonderful, wonderful series. I hope you continue to watch, and go back and watch the earlier episodes, and especially the one right before this one. They have their own YouTube channel. And you can be watching all of them, from when he was diagnosed and the parents were in the waiting phase, to see the arc of what's happening for them as well. This is not an easy thing, doing intensive behavioral intervention. It's not easy, but I think being able to watch them go through it helps to inform all of us. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do the viewer responses for the question of the day, which is, what skill is your child having a hard time learning? You guys have written in overwhelmingly, and I really want to talk about some of these. In fact, I want to talk about them with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox when he visits with us at 11 o'clock today. But we're going to talk about some of them in our next segment. Stick with us.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings. Military families impacted by autism wage a battle on 2 fronts. One for their country, and another for their children.
I know you, God knows, we're in a battle zone. Well, I'm fighting the war back here, and I'm fighting it all alone.
With 1 in 88 military children diagnosed with autism, the families face extraordinary challenges. But there is hope. With intensive treatment, the lives of children with autism and their families can be changed. You can make a difference.
We've all been waiting for.
To learn how you can help a military child with autism, go to acttodayformilitaryfamilies.org. Thank you.
Maybe tomorrow.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Just want to remind you guys, this entire show is meant to be a conversation with you. There's lots of ways to participate in the conversation. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com and it says live, you have a box right there in front of you that says your questions. You can type into that, hit enter, and it shows up magically here on my screen, and we can talk in that way. If you're watching and it says rebroadcast, you can always be emailing us. We love to get your emails. We answer your questions via email and text, but we also cover it on the next available show. You can be talking to us on Facebook. I'm about to read some of your responses for the question of the day on Facebook. You can be tweeting us, lots of different ways, and you can also phone us. You can even Skype us. So keep that in mind, because we love your questions, suggestions, comments, all of those things. So a lot of you wrote into the question of the day today on Facebook, and our question was, what skill is your child having a hard time learning? Because there are some things that are just harder for our kids, right? So I want to talk about some of these, and some of these I'm specifically going to want to talk about with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who's going to be visiting us at the top of the hour. He's the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, a wealth of knowledge. But one of the reasons why I like to ask you guys these kinds of questions on the show is because, you know what, it's very humbling for all of us to remember that different people are having different issues, and that it's not the same for all of us, right? We all have a different journey through autism. What was difficult for my son is easy for somebody else, and vice versa. So I think it's important for us to name the things that we're working on, that we're having difficulties with, and talk about potential solutions. I don't ever want to be in a position, and I always want to remind you guys, I'm not a BCBA, I'm a mom. My son was diagnosed 2.5, and we're doing really well because he had intensive ABA, and I always like to talk about ABA from that perspective of what I've seen it do in our lives and what I've seen it do in other people's lives. Quality ABA, the right amount over the right amount of time. And we will have BCBAs on the show from time to time, and we can consult them. So I never want to pretend to you as if I know. I'm not an expert in ABA or autism. I'm an expert in my child. But what I do know is that there are people who can help us with our children, and I try to connect you guys with those people as much as possible. And never do I want to appear to be giving child-specific advice, because from you writing in 1 or 2 words or 2 lines and onto Facebook, your child deserves very specific care. So I hope you're working with a BCBA who has experience with autism, and in particular some of the behaviors that we're talking about that might be more challenging. But I have to remind you that ABA is so effective. It's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism, and it can really address a lot of these different things that we're going to talk about. So, question of the day was, what skill is your child having a hard time learning? And somebody wrote in and said talking. Boy, it's so true for so many of our children that for them to be able to get to the place where they can speak, we want to start with functional communication skills always, and whether that is actual voice or not. One of the things that I love to hear from our experts on the show is that statistically, if a child is really having trouble, like they're not even at the point where they're doing a coax, where we can give them a sound and they can imitate us, how important it is to start with functional communication skills that maybe aren't vocal first, starting with iconic communication systems such as PECS, using technology, so many programs that are out there that can help our children to be able to communicate with us, and that statistically, the children who are taught functional communication skills first before attacking the vocal speech tend to do better. They will actually learn vocal speech faster. So I know as a parent, a lot of times somebody says to us, oh, well, I want to teach your child sign, or I want to teach your child how to speak on a device, and it feels like a death, right? It feels like, oh, you're giving up on my child, and you're giving up on my child being able to speak, and the dream that I have of my child being able to speak. And what the experts have told us time and time again, nothing could be further from the truth, that if we get those functional communication skills first, that statistically the child will be more likely to be successful at vocal speech. So want to remind you that we had a gentleman on the show last week, Joe Hill, no, I think it was Monday last week, it seems like a month ago, who has an app out called Air Talk, AEIR Talk, that you can buy on iTunes for $2, y'all. $2. Isn't that a great price? Where you can customize flashcards, take a picture with something, use it on your phone. It works on either Mac devices or Android. You can do it on your tablets, do it on your computer, either print them out or show them, and it can be really great for helping a child to speak. And this is a dad of 2 children who are starting to learn how to speak, and he invented it for his kids. $2. So a wonderful, wonderful thing to look into. Okay, another person who says pooping on the potty. And you know, I believe it was it this morning or last night, my son and I were talking about the whole, I think it was yesterday morning, we were talking about the whole pooping on the potty. Because, man, I did not think that was going to happen for us. But I really believe that the key to pooping in the potty is making it reinforcing enough. That was our jargon term for the day, reinforcer. When we find the right reinforcer, then it's amazing what can happen. We took my son to the toy store, and he found the toy that he wanted, and it was a Lego Knight. He was so into Legos, and he was so into Knights, and he wanted that thing. You could feel it vibrate in his being. And we put it up on this, and he had the, voiding in the toilet fine, but the poop in the potty scared him. He just did not want to do it, and it was so aversive to him. But we took that Lego Knight, put it up on the towel bar in front of the toilet, and he wanted it. And I said, as soon as you poop in the potty, you can have that. And, we had him on a schedule where, he would have opportunities to poop on the potty, and we've been trying a bunch of different things, but I'm telling you, that Lego Knight, and it was the thing that he picked out, by the way, and he danced. He literally danced, and got himself up on that potty and managed to what, and we gave him that night, because of that immediate reinforcement. He was so proud of himself. He was so thrilled, but in his mind, I can tell you, he doesn't remember this at all, but we were talking with him about it yesterday. In his mind, he was like, good, I'll never have to do that again, right? And so, he went to bed that night, and we picked up all the pieces to the Lego Knight, put them back in this lovely little tin that it came in, put the tin back up on the toilet bar, and the first thing, he woke up the next morning and said, Night, night, and went into the bathroom, and there it was, and I said, yep, as soon as you poop in the potty again, you get to have it. And the look on his face, but he danced around and got himself up on the toilet, pooped in the potty, and he got the Knight back. And we continued with that. We probably did a good 30 days where he could not play with the Knight until he had pooped in the potty. And let me just tell you, that became his full-time job, that he was gonna poop in that potty because he wanted that Knight. And it stayed reinforcing the whole time. You gotta find what's reinforcing to your child, but I gotta tell you, that's what did it for my child. Okay, the next person says any form of toilet training, he just doesn't understand. And I gotta tell you, great lessons in skills specifically for toilet training. And my child had no concept of the voiding either, but we had a very specific schedule that we followed that took all of the guesswork out of it. For the week before, we worked on, saying potty and making a whole trip to the bathroom where everybody, it was like this exciting thing to do. He didn't get that. He thought it was fun, but he had no idea what it was. Then during that time, we kept records about when he would drink something, how long afterwards he would void. And so what we did, because for him it was about 12 minutes, so we set it at we had a kitchen timer that was set for like 8 minutes, because we wanted to make sure that we were successful. So we gave him a bunch of water, and the timer would go off, and it would go ding, and we would all go potty time, and we would conga into the bathroom and sit him on the toilet. He would get like 5 minutes to try to void, where we didn't pressure him. We read books, made it a really fun time. And if he went to the bathroom, full on party, right? If he didn't, nothing was said. But after 5 minutes, we would pull up his shorts and take him back outside and set the timer for like 5 minutes. And if he hadn't done anything, when it went ding again, we would go back in and set him on the potty for another 5 minutes, setting the timer, not leaving anything. It was all very systematic. And if he went to the bathroom, party. If he didn't, after 5 minutes, we'd pull the pants back up, go back out, set it for 5 minutes again, give him some more water, and go back in. You know, there were some times when we would miss it in those 5 minutes, but eventually we strung enough times together where when he peed in the potty, it was such a party that eventually he got it. He got it. So don't give up. Don't give up. And if it's really something, please ask for help. You know, there's SOS, Specialized Outpatient Services, here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You can find it if you go to centerforautism.com, go to services, and don't give up on the potty training. The things that I hear from the experts who really know what they're doing say that they've never had a child that they couldn't train for potty training. So please don't give up. No matter how profoundly your child is affected, get some help, because you don't have to do it on your own. And there are grants as well to be able to help with those kinds of services. Okay, communication and getting things out like he needs, that they sure need some advice on how to help him. Again, please, write to us and tell us. If you're not doing ABA, write to me and tell me, and we'll have them put up the email address. Tell me what your stumbling block is so that I can help you. If it's funding, I can help you to put you in touch with the right people that can tell you, help you sort out your insurance issues or tell you where to go to get a grant. If it's that you don't know where the providers are, you don't know who the quality, write to me. Tell me what your problem is. Let's try to solve it together. Using the potty, there's another one. Okay, and more about the potty. Another parent who's saying that her 2 children are the same way. And that it's aversive. What I'm seeing from you guys is that the children refuse to go once they're there. We got to make it fun. It's the key to everything. If it's reinforcing, and by the way, we have anxiety about it, right? So sometimes it's good to just like step back and go, let's start at the beginning. Let's make going into the bathroom with whoever is going, and in our house we said it's only going to be mommy and daddy that ever go to the bathroom with you because it's private time, and we wanted to set that up. But we tried to make the bathroom the most exciting room in the house. So initially he had his little potty chair that had music because he found that reinforcing. Eventually we moved to the bigger potty, but we had the good stuff there. We even took a little portable DVD player that played cartoons. Make it the most fun room in the house before you go back into trying to work on voiding in the toilet. And I think it's really, everything that I hear from experts is you don't have to work on both things at the same time. It's much easier to teach a child to pee in the potty than it is to poop in the potty. Don't take on too much yourself, but remember, if it's reinforcing enough to them, you can get this done. Okay, riding a bike. This is the one that I shared that we're starting to attack again, and going poop in the toilet. He's 10 and a half, and we're now seeing a GI doctor about the poop problem. And that's a really good thing to remind people that sometimes you got to look at the plumbing situation and make sure that everything is working right, because we can't have an expectation that it's going to work right if there's other stuff going on the inside. So good for you. Eating new foods. This is a great one. It's really, really difficult. We have experts from time to time come in and talk about introducing new foods. It's really hard. One of the studies that gets talked about a lot is taking whatever a preferred food is and sticking a small amount of the new food that you want to introduce in so that it's hidden within the food. There's cookbooks about all that now. Tons of them about how to grind up a vegetable and stick it inside so that children don't even know. You can put broccolis in brownies. And I don't have a problem with my son eating vegetables. It's my husband. has the problem with that. And I sneak vegetables into things all the time that he doesn't even know. And trust me, he doesn't know. And that what the experts tell us is that over time, if you increase the amount of the substance, so let's say that you're putting broccoli in brownies to introduce broccolis, and at first you're just going to put a little bit of broccoli in, child's never going to know it's there. Then you put a little bit more broccoli in until the point where, you're like half broccoli and half brownie, and keep increasing it, and that actually works. It sounds disgusting, but eventually you get to the point where it's more broccoli than brownie, and I know chocolate and broccoli doesn't sound like a great thing, but if the child likes chocolate, it's not the worst thing in the world, and it works. So anger management is another thing that you guys are writing in about. Another wonderful. We're going to be talking with Dr. Tarbox about social skills, so we'll talk about that. Potty training, the shoe tying. We just got the shoe tying really solidly because he had learned it before, and then I bought him the Velcro shoes and we lost it. But chunking it into doing a task analysis on it. By the way, this whole lesson is in skills, and that's what I used to do this with my son the last month or so, and not trying to do more than one thing at a time. I started out with him and saying, okay, all you have to do is pull up the tongue and pull up the laces, and that's all you have to do. I'll do the rest. And then it went from there to you pull up the tongue, pull up the laces, and make an X and we worked on it one of those things a week. And he now, this morning, double knotted both of his shoes from beginning to end completely by himself, and there was no strife. I can't even believe it. I want to run around and scream and yell. Don't give up. Okay, my little man is having trouble learning to ride his bike without training wheels, but he hasn't given up on trying. It's exactly the thing that we're working on right now. But we can do it. A person who writes in about themselves that they can't, I don't know whether they said they can't drive, can't write and read, but obviously they can't be talking about themselves because they wrote that in, and that they would like to be working on anger management. All of our kids can learn. All of our kids. Outcomes are always going to be different, but they can all learn. Taking things one thing at a time, right? I encourage you all to be using ABA. And if you don't have access to a quality ABA provider, please know that Skills is there. All these lessons for all of these things, including anger management, by the way, are on Skills. And you could do CARDI learning and learn how to do these things yourself. My child had the benefit of a whole ABA team that worked with him worked on these kinds of things with him, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I really want that for all of you. But if you're waiting for that to happen, or you're someplace where there is no services like that, then please do CARDI learning and Skills, because you can. I now work on things with my son with Skills, and it's wonderful. Socialization and communication. We're going to be talking about social skills with Dr. Tarbox in just a little while. Here's one. Listening to one-step commands. It seems like his mind is going 80 miles per hour. A lot of times, our kids, it's this thing that we were just talking about with the A word. They don't know what the rules are. No matter what we're teaching, our basic principle of ABA is that in order for a behavior to happen and happen over and over and over again, it's got to be rewarding. It's got to be reinforcing. There's got to be a payoff for the child. So when we start to teach things, we always want to be mindful of setting the child up for success. And when we do that, we set ourselves up for success. So for the child who's constantly, their mind is going a mile a minute and they can't follow a one-step direction, we want to find an opportunity to reinforce them. So ask them to do something that you know that they already can do and that they really, really want to. That their desire to do it is like it's just palpable, right? You can see it on their body that they want something, and then reinforce them for it. And then over time, what you can do is, make sure that it's something that's really, really, really reinforcing to them, and that you get your attention. You may have to go back to gaining eye contact contact and attention, being able to attend to something for 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 60 seconds. But you can work on that by making it reinforcing too. But once you have that, then, and you've got the right reinforcer, you can start with not only one step, but you can go up to 5 steps, even with a fairly small child, to get them to be able to follow a command. Okay, here's literacy and reading comprehension, 5-year-old. That's with the 7-year-old. And for their 5-year-old, listening and waiting to talk when others are talking. And I laugh only because this is an ongoing thing. And my friends who have teenagers say, you know, keep working on that. We cycle in and out of that with my son, where he'll realize that I'm talking and he'll wait, and then you know, he'll get a little bit older and forget, and we constantly have to be on them about it. But I have to say, for literacy and reading comprehension, we just had a guest from Linda Mood Bell, and they have centers in 50 different places around the country. And I was very impressed with what they had to say about teaching our kids on the spectrum about reading comprehension. It was kind of amazing. That was on Wednesday. If you want to search that topic or watch it on Blip TV or on YouTube, it was the guest from Linda Mood Bell. Very interesting. Okay, toilet training, another one. Waiting and losing. Yeah. Again, skills, wonderful. They have a whole waiting program with teaching tips to teach you how to teach waiting. And there's also one on winning and losing, how to be an appropriate winner, what kinds of things to say and do, and how body language that you can give when you're winning to be appropriate, and how to be a good loser, what kinds of things to say, what kinds of things not to say, how to manage your body and your face so that you're not a poor loser. Social, somebody else, right? He talks to everyone. The real issue, though, is that he thinks everyone he meets is his friend. I wish that was how it really worked in life. Yeah, you know, there's a very specific lesson called Levels of Friendship, and it's in the social curriculum of skills, where you talk with a child about how, and really these lessons can be applied to a whole variety of different things, levels of anything, right? But levels of friendship, that what a stranger is, when it's appropriate to talk to somebody, when you have talked with somebody and you've shared something, are they your new friend, and what level of friend? Are they a close friend, or are they somebody you've just met? You know, it's tough, especially there's a certain age where when they're in kindergarten, we teach them that all of our classmates are our friends, right? And that's important for them to look at it that way. But then, you know, they get a couple of years down the road and they realize, you know, all these people are not my friends. Or we run into the position of kids who don't realize that all these kids aren't our friends, and talking about the criteria of what makes a good friend, how to be a good friend, how to recognize when somebody's a good friend, how to recognize when somebody's not a good friend, and to, you know what's the difference between an acquaintance. Really important, levels of friendship, a very interesting lesson. Another person says potty training, more anger management and listening skills. All of these absolutely tremendous, you guys, and there are more which we don't have time to get to right now. But again, at the top of the hour, we're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in. We've asked him to talk about a couple of things specifically, but one of them is social skills. And we'll talk about some of this other stuff, including the potty training, when he gets here. But if you have more questions, please feel free to write in and tell us. You can do that on the forum in front of you, or you can email or phone in. All right, we have to take a little bit of a break, but when we come back, we're going to address the myth of the day, which is that all children with autism belong in a special day class. It's a myth, and we'll talk about that when we come back, so stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We like to talk from time to time about myths surrounding autism and ABA because heaven knows there are enough of them, right? And I think it's really important that in this community that we're in, and we're all part of this club, right? I had a friend who say to me early on, this is the club that nobody asks for admission to, but once you're here, you find out that there are a lot of wonderful people and a lot of wonderful things going on. But we have our things that we need to do and focus on our children, our lives, figuring out how we're going to fund this journey through autism. It can be really, really stressful. But on top of that, we have to battle the entire world's misperceptions of what's going on in our homes, what's going on with our children, and what's appropriate for our children, right? I think that was one of the biggest cold showers that I took as a parent. I thought it was devastating enough that my child had been diagnosed with autism and that I was going to have to figure out how to negotiate this new thing. Seemed very overwhelming to me in the beginning, but then when I realized, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to deal with a bunch of people's perceptions of this as well, and their thoughts and feelings on this when they have no concept of what we're going through, and that was like, ooh, the water is right here. I'm about to go under. And I think that it's kind of frustrating for all of us, but it's our reality that we are constantly dealing with people's misperceptions about our kids, about us, about what our children need. And sometimes it's just the person at the grocery store, and other times it's your pediatrician, and other times it might be somebody who's on your child's IEP team, right? And I think it's important that, first of all, we all understand what's myth and what's truth. And that whenever possible, whenever we have an extra minute or it crops up in our lives, that we not make it our entire battle, but that we in some way can address and say, that's not the case. And our myth for today is there are a lot of people who just think that all kids with autism need to be in a special day class versus full inclusion. So want to take a couple of seconds to talk about that. Our kids are all individuals, right? They're all in different places on the spectrum, and they all have different needs. And so to assume that just because there is a word, a diagnosis, that, oh, well, that means that those kids all go to special day classes is such a disservice to our children as individuals, right? It would be equally preposterous to say that all children who don't have autism need to not have a special day class, right? We need to foster the idea that our kids are individuals and that they have different needs, and they should be looked at as individuals. But I also want to make a little bit of a case for inclusion as much as possible. You know, we are entitled to, thanks to IDEA, our children are entitled to free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment, which means that if our children behaviorally can handle it, that they should be allowed to be included in a regular classroom and all the things that come with that. And what we see a lot of the time is that it is the behavior issues that determine the placement of the child. Because if you're legally entitled to the least restrictive environment, then you know, it really is not going to be, I think often there's a misperception that it's going to be based on the child's academic abilities, which is not the case. If the child academically is behind, there are all kinds of children who are academically behind that are included and have extra supports. So there might be a push in where somebody comes in to help, or a pull out where they take them to help them to get caught up, but that they still have the right to be included and with all the things that come with inclusion. So then we're left with what usually determines, and maybe not always, but usually what determines whether a child gets offered placement, inclusion, or in a special day class, generally comes down to behavior. If the child's challenging behaviors prevent them from being able to access the curriculum or prevent other students from being able to access the curriculum, then generally the school is going to offer placement that is more restrictive and be in a special day class. Now, I want to say up front, there's nothing wrong with being in a special day class. However, the big asterisk, what we see with a lot of our kids is that given the opportunity, if we put a group of kids together who are all stimming, then it's going to be very hard in terms of sensory to insulate a child to the point where they're not going to want to stim because the person next to them is doing that. That's really difficult to do. So it isn't always the best thing to put our kids all together in a group. They need to be with people who will socially interact with them. They need to see how reinforcing it is to make eye contact. They need to be spoken to when they speak. It's got to be that level of reinforcement. Now, I know that all of the kids who aren't battling autism are not necessarily good little soldiers and responding to our kids and being polite, but that's an education issue, right? That is not our kids' issues, that's an education issue. And we want to give our kids the best possible opportunity to learn the things that they need to learn and have the best possible social interaction opportunities that they have, which does not mean segregating them all into one room and letting them stim. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense. And I know that there are parents of kids who are neurotypical who will say, well, you know, my child shouldn't have to sit next to a child who's humming, or my child shouldn't have to sit next to a child who is flapping their hands because it affects their ability to concentrate. Well, you know, everybody has their difficulties, and I know that it's really hard and that it's not our job to educate all those parents. Hopefully the school helps us to do that, right? It's our job to advocate for our children, and our children have a legal right to be in those rooms. And if they're able to access the curriculum at all, they have a legal right to be in that room. And if they are not putting anybody in danger, they have a legal right to be in that room. So I guess my point is that as as parents and as teachers, we need to look at the child and say, if there's challenging behavior that is keeping them from being in that included classroom, what can we do to target that? And we do an FBA done by a BCBA, an FBA that tells us what this behavior is, and we put a behavior intervention plan in place, and we follow that behavior intervention plan. And we make sure that the people on the team are appropriately trained to follow the behavior intervention plan. Yes, that's utopia. And I am well aware of the fact that we can fight for and get all of those things in place, but it doesn't mean that people are going to do it, which is why we are forever diligent. In fact, one of the things that we are going to be talking about briefly with Dr. Tarbox at the top of the hour is the recent case with Stuart Chaifetz, the dad who had his son go to school. He was seeing the child engage in challenging behavior that was new behavior, didn't know where it was coming from, put the tape recorder in his pocket, sent him to school, and got a tape recording of stuff that no parent wants to ever hear, right? And part of his frustration was that he had done all the right things. He had been at his son's IEP meeting, had made sure that there was a behavior intervention plan and that the people who were going to be implementing it had the proper training, and yet they chose not to. Well, you know, what a wonderful dad advocate that he made sure, sent the tape recorder, saw that they weren't doing it, and yeah, there's repercussions. And, you know, we'll see where those repercussions end, but so important for us as parents to have an understanding of what our children have the legal right to. Our children have a legal right to be included. They do. You might make a choice for your child to be in a special day class for a lot of different reasons. And maybe your child isn't ready for all the things that happen in an inclusion class. And that's an okay determination to make. But I hope that those of you who are listening don't automatically assume because your child has autism, and if they say, well, they need to be in a special day class, that is automatically where they should be. There are a lot of benefits to being included. And yes, sometimes it means that your child goes from the special day class to being included with a one-on-one aide, but you know what? That can be a tremendous thing, not just for your child, but for the entire class. I like to look at what all the positives are, and with the economy such as it is, and teachers' aides being out the window, having another adult in the classroom is a very beneficial thing for all of the kids in the classroom. My son's one-on-one aide when he was in kindergarten everybody adored her. Everybody thought that that was the most wonderful thing. She was a huge help to my son, made it possible for him to access the curriculum. But you know what? She also made it possible for other kids too, and she was a wonderful, wonderful resource for the teacher and for the entire class. You get the right person in there, and it just adds to the class. And you hear parents saying, I'm so glad your child is in my class, because I know that there's another person in there, and she's kind and considerate, and that just helps me to sleep better at night. So it does not have to be this big negative thing. It might be when you're fighting for it at the IEP, but that's our job. We advocate and do what we have to do. So don't automatically assume special day. And I'm always amazed that when I talk to people about my son, and for the 5 years that my son did intensive ABA, we didn't get out a lot. I'm just going to admit that. We were really focused on what it was that we were doing, and we didn't socialize as much, my husband and I, as we had certainly beforehand. I think some of that just comes hand in hand with being parents, but certainly the extreme to which we went had more to do with what we had going on at home intensively. But there are people that I won't have talked to that they'll say, how's your son doing? And I say, he's great. What grade is he in? He's in 3rd grade. It's so wonderful. He's doing this, that, and the other thing. And usually at some point they go, oh, you mean, does he go to a regular classroom? And I go, oh yeah, absolutely. And they're like, oh, I thought that he was going to some resource program or in a special day class or at a special school. And that always surprises me. That always kind of catches me off guard, and I go, oh my goodness, no. My son has been fully included since the first day of kindergarten. Actually, he was fully included the year before. when he went to preschool. Now, I will tell you quite honestly that when we went to our first IEP with school when he was 3, and the recommendation that the school made was for him to be in a special day classroom. And I visited the special day classroom and said, this is not an appropriate setting for my son. This is not where my child will learn and grow. We need to be doing early intensive ABA this year while he's 3 at home. We'll come for speech and OT, but this is not the place where we are going to have our son. And that was a bit of a battle and a bit of a stress. I'll be completely honest with you. But what I know for sure, because that is in fact what we did do. He had 40 hours of intensive ABA in our home, and it made all the difference, you guys. In 1 year, they evaluated my son right before his 3rd birthday and said, this is what we feel is FAPE, this is what we feel is an appropriate setting. He needs to be in this classroom with 4 other kids who were very extreme. I mean, I'm talking about wearing helmets and beating head against the wall. This is the room that he needs to be in. And we didn't put him in that room, and a year later, he qualified for full inclusion in a completely typical preschool. And that was because, not because I was great at arguing it, but it was because he had that early intervention from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, who will forever have my great gratitude, right? But we had that intensive year at home, and in that year, my child began to speak. In that year, my child began to ask questions. In that year, my child became compliant. In that year, my child got excited about learning. He was by no means done then. He's not done now. As I said, we continue to work on skills at home. But that year of intensive ABA is when we started to get our child back. It's so incredibly worth it. I hope that you guys are doing ABA at home. If you're not, I hope you're doing CARDI learning and skills, and so you're learning how to do this yourself. And if you're not doing any of those things, please write in and tell me what's holding you back. What's holding you back? Is it the money? Because there are solutions to that problem. And please let me be on your team and help you to figure out what you need to do to start ABA with your child. And by the way, it doesn't matter if your child is 3 or if your child is 33. These things these principles and these lessons can help you, can help your child. Their life will be richer and fuller. Your life will be richer and fuller. All right. We know that we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox coming with us at some point, but I believe he's been held up a little bit. We're going to take a really short break, and I'm going to come back and talk to you a little bit about a social tip in case we don't have him back. But if we do, we'll be talking about social with Dr. Tarbox, so stick with us.
Hello, I'm Polly Tommy. Over the last 3 years, we've been shouting out about teenagers on the autism spectrum that are fast becoming adults. I want you to meet 7 teenagers, all with varying degrees of autism, and they're just 7 of hundreds of thousands worldwide. It's not about what they can't do, it's about what they can do. It doesn't matter if you're verbal or non-verbal, whether you need support or you don't need support. Please join us in showing the world that all people with an autism spectrum disorder deserve to be given a chance.
My name's Tony, I'm 16 and I love working in the cafe.
Thank you.
Tea and your biscuit. Is there anything else I can get you?
No, it's good, thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Hello, I'm Billy. I am 15 years old. I like to do some planting things.
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm 16 and training to be a chef.
I'm Toby. I'm 18. I like to feed chicken.
Hi, I'm Sam. I'm 17 and I want to be a graphics designer.
Hi, I'm Dean. I'm 16 and I want to be a computer programmer.
Hi, my name's Lee Tower and I'm 13 and I want to be a drummer when I'm older.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Until he gets here, I promised you that we would talk a little bit about social skills, and he's going to talk about that with us when he gets here as well. But we got a little bit delayed anyway in the things that we were talking about, and I wanted to talk to you about social referencing. This was going to be our social tip for the day. That when there is something that happens with our children, or rather something that often doesn't happen with our children, called social referencing, that if I'm eating something and I'm going, you know, and I'm making faces about how wonderful it is, and my body language and my facial expressions are saying, oh, this is so wonderful, then for a small child, there is a connection that can happen where they look at how I'm relating to whatever it is, and they take on that appreciation of whatever it is themselves. So they sort of adopt my attitude. So if I'm walking someplace and a big dog comes out and I'm afraid of dogs and I go, you know, that the child has no reference point for a dog at this point, right? It's their first interaction with a dog. I'm scared, and so the child sees that and they become scared too, right? So they're taking on, whether it's good or bad or indifferent, that they will take on our attitude and opinion and emotion about a thing, and share that with us. We know, you know, sometimes this happens and we'll say, oh, you know, I'm afraid of heights, so now my child is afraid of heights. Well, sometimes this just isn't happening with a child at all. They're not social referencing, but this is something that we can teach. And this is really important to teach because it's one of many things that happens in a long series that will eventually get us to the point where we can get to perspective taking, where a child realizes, okay, I'm thinking something, you're thinking something, they're not always the same. But we do go through a phase with social referencing where we want it to be the same, that we want them to pick up on these clues that we're giving that, you know, this tastes bad. But we can work on this with our children by making it reinforcing for them. So we can set up circumstances where, and the key here is that it's got to be something that they don't have a reference for. So it has to be something new and novel to them. So whether that's, you know, we find a food that they've never tasted before that we don't want them, you know, something bizarre and strange that isn't on the list of things that we really want them to, and that has a yucky smell to it, or sometimes they have stickers that are sticky, they smell bad. They have different smells to them. And so we take it and we smell it and go, oh, and our hope is that the child isn't going to want to smell it now because they know that it smells bad. And we reinforce it when they don't participate. You know, of course, what comes to mind is when we, you know, this happens in all of our homes, right? That somebody goes to take the milk and they smell it and go, this smells bad, you smell it, right? This is not what we want to be working on with a child. We're hoping that they pick up and are the rational person that, you know, this is icky, so I don't want it, or it hurts somebody else, or it smells bad, or it's unpleasant, or oh, it's wonderful, so I might want to try it. And we teach this by reinforcing. We set up our circumstances, make sure that it's new and novel, and that we're careful about not making something aversive that later on we want to be something that they try, right? And then reinforce the child when they react appropriately following our cues. We're going to be over the top with our cues to start, right, and gradually fade them down, but reinforce them when they react appropriately. So if we're smelling something sticky and going, oh, it's horrible, and then the child wants to smell it, then we're not going to reinforce that, right? But we'll reinforce them not wanting to interact with a thing that's unpleasant, and reinforce them wanting to react with something that's pleasant. Okay, so I'm told that Dr. Tarbox is here, yes? I don't have my sound. I believe that he's here. So in any case, we're going to take a break and we will bring him into the studio and we'll be back with you in just a minute, so stick with us.
My name is Crystal Shepard.
I'm Pete.
And our son Logan was diagnosed in February of 2003. Wow, it seems like a long time ago. We were fortunate enough to find Card when he was 20 months old. My husband called and said, "You need to go to this place. I've researched it. You need to go right now." So I went and knocked on the door, and we found Doreen.
Doreen, we sat down, and I'll never forget what she said. She goes, "Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get him caught up and make sure he never falls behind again." I was like, that's it, you know?
He's a very fun, popular kid. He
Rock
never
star.
Rock star. He's a drummer, quite an accomplished drummer. He never stops talking. He's got a funny story and a smile for everybody that he meets. And it's pretty amazing. He's a completely different kid. Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and Card's been there with us every step of the way.
My name's Monica.
And I'm Mark.
And we have a son, Riley, and he is autistic.
Riley was almost completely non-communicative at the time that he was diagnosed. Really no language, no interest in speaking. And one of the big changes is he independently states a lot of things now.
I need to walk.
You need to walk? Make him walk. Asks for things that he wants, responds appropriately.
Hi, Daddy Dory.
Oh, so nice. We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have Card, you're very blessed.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job Card has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with Card. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some glasses?
And now she engages with everybody. It's wonderful. She likes to play, and she's very affectionate, and she expresses that now. Her language has gotten a lot better just in the last 4 months. It's amazing.
Since starting with Card, Amaya's made a ton of progress, and we couldn't be more grateful that she has become potty trained, started using utensils individually. She is learning how to navigate public, is holding our hands, and is just wanting to be around people more. So we're so grateful for everything that you guys have done.
Hi, Dr. Grandpa Shay. Congratulations on your 20-year anniversary of Card. I love all my Card teachers. They are the best. And now I'd like to play you a Beatles song. It's called Cross the Universe.
I first saw Dr. Grandpa Shay speak at a biomedical conference somewhere, and I was just so impressed with her. She stood up there and she talked with such confidence about recovery and what she could do for these children, and she had a whole curriculum, and I was just so impressed. But she said things like, you know, teach them, help them to develop these other skills that they have. And I thought that was so neat hearing that from her, that it would be good for them socially and help them to bridge with others. And so over the years, that's actually something my son has developed. You know, if he hadn't had speech therapy or OT over the years, he probably would be just about, you know, pretty much the same child still, not so different. But if he hadn't had Card, I mean, he would be a completely different child. This program has unlocked the door for him to have a bright future.
Bye. Thanks watching.
My name is Rachel Pekorski, and I have a son, Kyle Pekorski, who's 7 years old now.
Cool art by Kyle.
Around 15 months, we noticed that he had lost some speech, that he was headbanging, he had tantrums, and we were lucky. We waited and we got in with Card, and it started working right away.
I have another exciting feature. If you put more marbles in, they alternate.
He's in a second grade class. He's at the top of his class. He reads over 100 words a minute. He's reading at 5th grade level. He loves space and astronomy, and he'll tell you, why does Venus rotate backwards? Yeah, why don't the marbles go up? Why do they go down?
Because gravity.
And he's always wanting to know more.
Why are you the one that takes the microphone?
He loves to surf.
First, I didn't want to surf, but now I love to surf.
He loves to horseback ride.
I won a trophy.
You have made a difference in his life.
Card helped me to save.
I owe everything to you. Now, who built this?
I did.
And are you a good builder?
Yes!
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here with our special guest, I promised you, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. You are the head of research and development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. A wonderful, wonderful job.
I think so.
And you do a wonderful job at it. It's a fabulous thing. We asked if you would come in today to talk to us about some very specific things. And I want to start with this story that's been in the news a lot lately. The Stuart Chaifetz, the dad, who his son was in a special day class. For those of you guys, if you've been watching the show, you guys are familiar that he stuck a tape recorder to see what was going on in class, and came back with a bunch of stuff that are a parent's nightmare.
Right.
And we've talked about it on the show and how disturbing it is from the parent point of view. I've talked about it a little from the teacher point of view, that I'm appalled as a parent. I'm equally appalled that people were talking in this way and there were clearly other adults in the room and nobody said anything. That is so disturbing to me.
Right, absolutely.
I just don't understand what their justification is, but really love that we have an opportunity to talk about it with you as a professional who works with children, who does a lot of research and has been in circumstances where you've seen things, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this matter.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm, I think just as shocked as anyone. It's just kind of heinous, just insane to have a professional whose job it is to nurture this kid's development and happiness to be, bad-mouthing him and verbally abusing him is just absolutely bonkers. And it would be crazy, with any kid, typically developing kid. But with a kid who has a developmental disability and can't report it and can't stand up for himself and doesn't even have the ability to tell his parents, it's just sick. So, I'm shocked. Unfortunately, I'm not that surprised. I've been working in and out of schools with kids with autism and other disabilities for, I guess, about 13 years now. And, I don't want to badmouth public education. I don't want to, go off on a tangent of that. There's plenty of that already. I don't like to sort of perpetuate the stereotype of the arrogant ABA person who thinks all ABA people are great and all teachers are idiots. That stereotype isn't even real, but I don't want to, perpetuate that. But I have to say, over the last 13 years, I've seen this exact kind of behavior many, many, many times. I don't remember if I've mentioned this on your show before, but the very first kid I ever worked with in Vermont, in a rural school district in Vermont, the reason why we were working with the kid was because his mom had to pull him out of school and homeschool him using ABA because the teacher had put him in a broom closet because they didn't know what else to do with him. So that he was literally in a broom closet. I mean, they had taken the cleaning supplies out, but still, he was in a closet urinating on himself, sitting in a puddle of his own urine all day. So that was my introduction to autism. And, it's usually not that bad. But I have seen, just completely unethical, completely unacceptable behavior on the part of school staff on a regular basis.
And you know, it's shocking to me on so many different levels, because having been a teacher and having been in the public school system as a teacher and now as a parent, you know, I keep, this last year, the stories that we've heard, and I keep thinking we're past that point. It just sounds so archaic. If you had said to me that that happened in 1952, I would go, that's shocking.
Right.
That's inhumane, but that was 1952. Surely we don't do that anymore, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't 1952. You're talking about 13 years ago. And to hear that, you know, in this last year, the teacher who put the student in a duffel bag, that she thought that that was an appropriate intervention. This last December, she put the child in a duffel bag and thought that that was an appropriate intervention for challenging behavior in the classroom. And excuse me, I hear these things and I think, okay, you know, there's the outrage as the parent, there's the outrage as the professional, but I keep going back to, well, what's the first step? Which has to be that that this person had no tools.
Yeah, clearly. And I have to say that's the one thing that I've seen the most often associated with all of this unprofessional behavior is just a complete lack of training. And I don't know, at risk of sounding maybe overly critical, sometimes school districts are required to dredge the bottom of the barrel to get staff for paraprofessionals and one-to-one aides. I mean, honestly, I've seen that many times where, I mean, again, I hope this doesn't sound inappropriate, but I wouldn't hire that person to dig a ditch or to clean the garbage. Wow. I mean, you know, these are people who are not qualified, shouldn't be trusted with anything, let alone children with disabilities.
But clearly that's not the case all the time.
And I don't think that's the norm. No, by no means is that the norm.
But it has the potential to be there.
Let me just put it this way. I've seen it many times. Wow. It's not once or twice. It's every school district I've ever worked in. I've worked in many different states, I don't know, 5 or 6 different states. And I've seen it in every state that I've worked in. And I think what it comes down to is it's a difficult job to be a paraprofessional, yes, a one-to-one aide.
Absolutely.
It's very low paying, and it's challenging, and there aren't that many people who want to do it. And so it's very challenging for school districts to hire people to fill these positions. And if they're required to do it in an IEP, they have to do it. So they're going to take whoever they can get. And the school districts don't have sufficient funding to provide these individuals with proper training. So first of all, you have a significant proportion of them who shouldn't be there in the first place, no matter what training they get. They're just not bringing what they need to bring to the table to begin with. And then you compound that problem with completely inadequate training in virtually every school district. And again, I hope that I'm not overgeneralizing, but it's almost a universal truism that one-to-one aides in American public education do not receive sufficient training. And I'm sure there's a couple school districts that are exceptions.
Absolutely.
But that is the norm, is inadequate training.
And we have to say that there are some aides that are out there that are these amazing people. My son has had the benefit of that. So it's by no means everybody, but you know, it's the parents' nightmare.
Yeah.
That we need to send our children to school and making sure that, you know, I'm a big fan of saying we need to have legislation. I don't think it's going to happen unless we have legislation where everyone, from the bus driver to the crossing guard to the ladies that work in the lunch line, needs to have some sort of training on behavior. Behavior, because it's not just autism. There are kids who have behavior issues that are not on the spectrum.
Absolutely.
And as we see, you know, more and more.
It's also true for the police force. I mean, you know, we just had this man with schizophrenia beaten to death by police officers in Orange County, and I'm sure they weren't intending to murder the guy, but they didn't know how else to deal with him, I suppose. And of course, I'm sure there was inadequate training and everything else there too. But yeah, challenging behavior, people just don't know how to deal with it. And sort of by default, people just go to inappropriate and overly aggressive tactics if they don't know what else to do.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's all too easy for us as parents to look and say, well, this is the school's problem and that they should be taking care of it. But we know that unless we do something, they can't. And just you saying that about the police force, there's a group of people in my community that they're a group of autism and Asperger parents that what they targeted was making sure that the police force got trained. So that if anything ever happened with one of their kids, the police would understand that if a child's running away or a teenager is running away, it isn't necessarily because they've done something bad. And every year they have trainings that they provide for the police force, the local police force. So you can make a difference if you're a parent. But, you know, I have actually had a couple of people look at the video of Stuart Chaifetz and say, okay, well, clearly there's some inappropriate things, but is it that big of a deal? Which is so, you know, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
But there are some very specific things that happen in the, that he talks, the dad talks, you can watch it on YouTube. And then he'll play a portion of the tape, and he hasn't played all of the tape, but he'll play a portion of the tape. And there are some specific things that I wanted to talk with you about. Sure. Like the fact that at one point the child, who is not very verbal, but at one point he specifically says to the teacher, can I see? There's something that he wants to see. And then they say, no, you can't see. And then they snicker, and there's some laughing at, which is particularly upsetting to me as a parent who's been through ABA, and this child has been through ABA, that a child could request something like that. Talk to me a little bit about how detrimental is that to his ongoing growth?
Not reinforcing appropriate, non-aggressive functional communication. It's probably the worst thing you could do, other than actual physical and verbal abuse. Yeah, reinforcing communication is the most fundamentally important thing to do for all people who have any degree of communication deficits or disorders. And that's not just an ABA principle. I think every speech therapist would agree with you. Every decent special education teacher would agree with you on that. Right. They might not say the word reinforcement. They might say encourage or reward or promote or foster communication. But communication, appropriate, non-aggressive, non-destructive communication is the most fundamentally important thing to encourage in children with disabilities.
And one of the things that the dad talked about why he sent the tape recorder to begin with was that they started the new school year, although this is a classroom that he's been in for many years, but they were seeing some challenging behaviors crop up at home.
Right.
And that they were looking at and having their home team look at and saying, we're trying to figure out where this behavior is coming from. And there was a conversation that the dad had with one of the other students in the classroom where he said, Akian is crying a lot in school. And the dad had conversations and saying what's going on and had not gotten the answer that he wanted, so he sent it. But is it appropriate to draw the line and go, well, there's challenging behavior at home. Is it appropriate to say that could be caused by some of the things that were happening that you heard on the tape?
Well, I'm a scientist, so my job is to be skeptical and to not make any cause and effect statements where there isn't real clear evidence. So okay. I mean, personally, from a research and ABA perspective, I wouldn't say that this is proof of causation at all. Right. But certainly if there's an unexplained change in behavior, especially an increase in challenging behavior, any part of any appropriate or comprehensive FBA or functional behavioral assessment would be sort of investigating all the different possible contributions. So of course what's going on at school would be one source of potential contribution to the problem. And so that would need to be investigated. One day of tape recording of incredibly inappropriate behavior doesn't necessarily explain the whole picture, because there really are a lot of reasons why a child's behavior could get worse at the beginning of a new school year. Maybe new challenges, maybe the tasks are more difficult. There's probably a variety of reasons. That's not to minimize this in any way whatsoever. Right. I mean, what the tape did was document completely unacceptable and completely inappropriate and unprofessional behavior, and that's unacceptable, regardless of whether or not it makes the kids' challenging behavior worse. Of course, it's worse if it makes it worse, but it's still completely insane, even if it had no negative effects at all on the kids' challenging behavior.
Okay, and a lot of people, their reaction to it, and certainly the dad's reaction is, he said, one of the things that was really disheartening was the fact that these people had these conversations as if the kids could not hear.
Right.
And as if
that's why that's why the behavior was happening. That's why teachers don't do that as much in classrooms of typically developing kids, because they won't get away with it. They'll get caught.
Right, and to assume that because a child isn't as verbal that they're not understanding receptively. So could you talk a little bit from a research perspective of when people make an assumption because a child can't talk that they're not understanding?
Well, that's a really tough one because there is a very close link between receptive and expressive language. In general, this isn't necessarily my area of expertise, but in general, I believe a lot of folks on the spectrum do have stronger receptive language skills than expressive. So, you know, just because a kid can't say the word apple doesn't mean he doesn't understand the word apple, or, you know, hell or shut up or whatever else. And so, yeah, I mean, one needs to be careful of that. It's really hard to say, though, quite honestly, without appropriate, or not appropriate necessarily, but without precise testing and assessment, you really don't know what a kid's receptive language ability is until you evaluate it carefully.
So not okay to assume.
Definitely not okay to assume. But look, what we're forgetting is this whole discussion is based on the idea that if the kid doesn't understand me when I verbally abuse him, then it's okay to do it. Like, that's just bonkers. It doesn't even matter if the kid was deaf. You still shouldn't be laughing at him, telling him to shut up, and telling him he doesn't get to see his dad after his mom, or, you know, any of this other crazy stuff. It's just nuts.
Completely inappropriate. And of course, you know, it's ongoing because the teacher has said that she was not in the room, that's not her in the tape, that she was not in the room. I'd love to know where she says she was. And the dad has now said that he has proof that she was in the room, so she has retained a lawyer. And, you know, which I'm sure she probably should. And very upsetting. It will be very interesting to see. And, you know, you hear these things and you think, well, you know, how horrible for this parent, but I really appreciate the fact that he's brought it to light and that we're having these conversations.
Yeah, and, you know, it's interesting. It's just yet another contribution of social media and of the internet that this even got out. Otherwise, he would have told his neighbors and his friends. You know, maybe it would have gotten on a listserv or something like that, but it wouldn't have captivated the entire special ed community the way it is now.
Yeah, 1.5 million in the first 24 hours. And as of yesterday, they were well over 4 million people who had viewed it.
And I really hope this shines a light on the need for greater professionalism in special education, you know, and particularly with respect to one-to-one aides and paraprofessionals.
And I keep going back to there's got to be training. There has to be training. I have seen teachers in the classroom who get overwhelmed. And if you don't give tools and you give something that has the potential to be overwhelming, what is your expectation of what is going to happen? We have to give these people tools before they have the opportunity to work with the children.
I completely agree, and in this case, I would say, even with all of the appropriate training, you don't tell a kid to shut up. You don't yell at a student to shut up. That's just inappropriate. It doesn't matter whether the kid has a disability or not, but it makes it even worse if the kid has a disability and can't stand up for himself. So, I mean, we don't even say that in our training. We don't tell people don't say shut up because it's completely obvious. It's basic human decency. You don't yell at a kid to shut up in a classroom.
I agree. I think there are some people who cannot be in these positions, right? And there has to be a screening for that. But I'm thinking specifically about, there was a case a couple of weeks ago in Riverside County with, it was a substitute teacher, but there was a child in a classroom on the autism spectrum who just had a sensory thing where he liked to touch everybody's ears. And so he would go around and the teacher knew it and the students knew it, and I don't know if they were working on it or whatever, but it would happen. And the substitute teacher, who was a bit of a long-term sub from my understanding, then saw this behavior, and there was a behavior intervention plan, but had no idea of how to implement it, right? And so she made this decision based on her life that what she thought was appropriate was to teach the child a lesson and go and pinch his ears and say, how do you like this? So every time he would touch another child's ears, she would go and pinch his ears. So he came home with bruised ears, and the mom said, what's going on? And they were like, well, you know, he was touching other people. Now, this teacher has been fired and lost her career as a teacher. When honestly, you know, my thing is, if this teacher I have no idea what her teaching skills are. This is completely inappropriate. And you would think you would know not to touch a child in this day and age, right? But, you know, if this teacher had known how to correctly implement any kind of behavior, you know, I would like to think that that wouldn't have happened.
I would hope, but I don't know. I mean, you know, if you're using physical contact with a kid that results in them being bruised, and it's not to prevent, you know, a physical emergency. If a kid's running across the street and you have to tackle him so he doesn't get hit by a car, that's different. But if it's because he's touching other people's ears and you end up bruising the kid's ears, just
Dr. Tarbox.
crazy.
I know, but these are the kinds of things that are happening. The other teacher who they were trying to make safe environments for kids who have sensory issues, so they bought these cardboard boxes. That this is the new thing for this economy, cardboard boxes that they can make into little houses and the kids can decorate them. And so that was the behavior intervention plan, that if the child appropriately asked, that they could go into their little cardboard box.
At least it was the child requesting it.
That was what it was supposed to be. That's what it was supposed to be, that the child, it was in his behavior intervention plan that if he asked for it, he could go into his little house, but the teacher didn't know how to implement the BIP. So anytime he would engage in challenging behavior, she would punish him by sending him to his house. Well, the challenging behavior.
I had not heard this.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
The challenging behavior increased, oddly enough, because he wanted time in the house, which was what was promised to him. It was his decorated house. So it was increasing, so he was spending more and more time in the house, and the teacher couldn't figure out what was happening. And you just go, this is so depressing to me, because it's such a simple fix. It's not the punishment, it's the reward for the appropriate, and completely flip it on its side, and now the child's not accessing the curriculum, and he's engaging in the behavior more.
Yeah, not to mention, I'm quite sure the school district has a policy against putting a child in timeout in a cardboard box.
Well, yes, they do. But that wasn't what was in the BIP. The teacher just didn't know how to carry out the BIP. Didn't know the difference between reinforcement and punishment. Really basic stuff.
Yeah,
this is the state of the...
Wow.
I know.
Wow.
I know! And yet, we have to somehow figure out how to get past this, because we're seeing, it's almost on a weekly basis now, one of these stories crops up. So training for me and a screening process is what I'm hearing
Really
from
important.
you.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, screening process is only the beginning. Training is the most important part. I completely agree with that. Screening is only as good as as it can be, but still, you're going to let some rotten apples through. And even the best possible candidate for a position without proper training is not going to do a good job. They're going to make mistakes too. So, training is really critical.
And it's such an emotional issue. I mean, you're a parent. Can you imagine turning any of these people loose in a classroom with your kids?
Yeah,
it's crazy making.
Unbelievable.
All right, we're going to take a break and regroup and come back and talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about social skills and how we can actually teach social skills to our kids on the spectrum. And we're also going to ask Dr. Tarbox about some of the questions of the day that you guys answered to get his feedback on some of the things you mentioned, like toilet training and aggression, those kinds of things. So stick with us. Now's a great time, if you have a question for Dr. Tarbox, to write in at this moment or call in at this moment. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a second. One more thing.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that, they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz. And once you pass that quiz, you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California, and because it's Friday, our special guest is Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We've been talking about some of the stories in the news and how disconcerting they are, so time to talk about happier,
all right.
happier things.
Great.
We had a question yesterday in particular about social skills, and the question was actually, can we teach social skills to kids and adults on the autism spectrum, and how do we do it? So first of all, can we?
Well, yes. The answer is definitely yes.
Okay.
I'm hoping that that viewer who asked that question doesn't have a child in an ABA program. Otherwise, they should already know the answer to that.
No.
But yeah, the answer to that is a resounding yes.
Okay. And so how do we effectively teach social skills and those kinds of things? I'm imagining you're going to say ABA.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the full answer to that would be probably 2 or 3 college level classes. But I'll try to keep it short here.
Okay.
You know, the short answer is social skills and social behavior and the whole social interaction sort of dance is no different from any other type of skill that you learn. It's no different from any other type of behavior. Fundamentally, it's the same thing as learning to ride a bike, learning math, learning spelling, learning to talk, learning to put on your pants. It's all just behavior. The distinguishing thing about social skills, though, is that there's a huge range of complexity, starting with really simple stuff like even just looking at someone else when something important happens, which is called joint attention, like sharing your experiences with others, all the way up to incredibly complex social skills, things having to do with perspective taking. So let's say predicting how someone else is going to feel based on your actions and the results that it caused or did not cause or is going to cause, you know, things like that. So there's a huge range of complexity.
Okay, and so obviously, you know, this is something that you guys have been doing for a while. It's not like it's a brand new thing.
No.
But there's a certain amount of, I hear you guys talking about stuff that's on the inside, like thinking, and that, you know, there's behaviors that we all understand and go, well, you know, yawning or whatever. There's these behaviors and we can see them, but when stuff is happening when you're thinking,
how do we deal with that?
Right. Well, I've heard you guys talk about, you know, it's going on the inside.
Yeah. Well, the way, I mean, there's a lot of different perspectives on that, and really what it boils down to is different philosophical sort of assumptions about how you think the world works or what there is that exists in the world of psychology.
Okay.
So some people think there's brain things, events in the brain, and then there's outside behaviors. And psychology includes those two things, and the environment and stimuli that happen in the environment. And psychology studies the interaction between those three things. A radical behavioral perspective believes that covert or private things that you do, so actions that you engage in that are on the inside, are behavior. And so radical behavioral perspective on psychology treats thinking as behavior, treats imagining as behavior. Even emotions have a behavioral component to them. Things like planning are behavior, cognition. Basically, the idea is the vast majority of what everyone calls cognition involves something that you actively do.
Right.
It's not just a brain passively firing neurons and then overt behavior. There's something that you actively do on the inside, and the reason why I'm making quotes is because to me, fundamentally, there's no difference between behavior that's observable to other people versus behavior that isn't.
Right.
So a real simple example would be silent reading. So you can read out loud, and it's real clear what you're doing, right? Is there behavior there? Yeah, clearly you're reading, right? And you could read exactly the same passage, but silently, to yourself, in your head, right? No problem there, right? It's exactly the same behavior. The only difference is how observable it is to other people.
Right.
And usually behaviors are learned overtly first, so the outside behavior, the observable behavior, because it's easier for your family and your teachers and your community to teach you.
Right.
And then gradually we all learn that a lot of behaviors you're actually not supposed to do on the outside.
Right.
It's not necessarily that they're inappropriate, it's just inappropriate if you do them on the outside.
Right.
So reading is a perfect example. Usually we read silently, right? Same thing with most reasoning about social relations. So if you're hanging out with a friend, playing with a friend on the playground, you could sit there and say out loud, if I ask Jimmy to play handball, he'll probably say yes, and that'll be fun. You could say that on the outside, but that would be pretty weird, wouldn't it?
Right.
But that's a lot of what we do on a regular basis. So, a more adult example would be, you're at a cocktail party or something with colleagues or whatever it is, and you're talking about some particular topic, and let's say you're getting really bored of the topic and you wish you could talk about something else or leave the conversation. You start having an inner dialogue, right? You start talking to yourself, but silently or in your head. Start saying to yourself things like, wow, this is really boring, or does he really think he's that funny, or or God, I can't believe we're still talking about this 30 minutes later, and so you start engaging in cognition, reasoning, talking to yourself, thinking to yourself, and you start engaging in planning, like, well, I wonder if I could change the topic, or I wonder if I could just go say I have to go use the bathroom, or and so these are the types of things that everyone's engaging in all the time.
Yeah.
And if you assume that all of that inside stuff is just brain activity, then you're kind of left with nothing to teach. Because how do you teach brain activity? We don't know how to do that, right? There's no surgery yet that you can cut someone's brain in the right way and now suddenly they have a bunch of social skills, right? So in behavior analysis and ABA, what we've done is taken all of that complex cognition and say, well, I think actually we can teach that. Let's figure out how to teach it. And let's teach it in really simple ways first, really contrived, simplified, overt baby steps, essentially. And then as the child masters those simpler skills, gradually make them more complex and gradually teach the child to start executing these same skills, but at a quieter and eventually covert or in the head level. And we have great success with this. I mean, it's like any other behavior. There's prerequisite skills that you'll need. But if you've got the prerequisite skills and you have the proper teaching and sufficient practice and enough prompting and enough generalization training and enough fading out of the prompts, it's like anything else. There's no reason why you can't learn it.
Well, I certainly have seen that in my home. From my child, the vast, amount of lessons that we learned over the years about different things. One of the things that I always talk about was one time we went to the grocery store and there was a man in line ahead of us and my son just very loudly said, "Look at that guy's nose." That is a huge nose. And of course, I looked up and this was a very huge nose. Certainly noteworthy, right? But, not appropriate to be talking about it. And now we'll be someplace and see something after all the different things that we worked on. And, we'll walk out of a store and we'll get in the car and I'll get the door shut and my son will say, okay, nobody can hear us now. And I go, yeah. And he'll go, did you see what was going on there? And we have a discussion about it. But that was certainly not the case, and he wouldn't have gotten there had we not done all the lessons.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so, typically developing kids learn a lot of this stuff just as a normal part of their socialization in society, So maybe a typical kid would make that mistake once, and then the parent would reprimand them and model the right way to do it for them once. The parent doesn't even realize they're trying to teach their kid anything. They're just having the natural response, which is, hey, don't do that, that's rude, and you explain it to the kid, and now hopefully they do better with it, and maybe they'll need feedback a couple more times. The only difference with kids on the spectrum is they're going to need some more practice, and they might need a little more specific prompting, a little bit clearer modeling, or a little bit more practice with role playing, and a little bit more explicit planning for generalization to make sure the kid actually can apply the skill in the real environment. But really the fundamental learning process is the same. It's instructions, it's feedback, it's help when you need it, it's encouragement, and plenty of practice.
What I think is really interesting about some of the things that you guys have done and looking at some of the lesson plans, what was fascinating to me, not as a researcher and not as a behavior expert, is that it's beneficial to all of us. Some of the things that I was reading in the social skills curriculum of skills, in the social language domain, there's the whole thing about joining a conversation that's already, and it's amazing, you guys, because it's this whole thing about, how you stand, how you angle your body, how you have to raise your voice at a certain timbre, how you have to listen to the conversation for a certain amount of time. It's all these different steps that you can teach individually to get to the point where a child could enter a conversation, make a decision about do they have something to add to the conversation, and the rate at which they have to, when you think about it,
there's a lot to it.
There's a lot to it, but there are plenty of adults who could benefit from this lesson.
And so what we've tried to do when we create lessons like that is sort of figure out what would form like the perfect repertoire of behavior in that area. So if someone was just a complete champ with that skill, what would it look like? And so we try to specify all the different components of this whole repertoire of behavior. And then for each individual child, the goal is to figure out, okay, where do they fit into that? And which particular components are they missing? And then do lots of teaching and practice with those components. Most typically developing adults don't, they're not perfect. They don't have all of that, And so all of us could use some degree of help, some more than others, But it's kind of like, nobody's the best, nobody's perfect at anything, and the same is true with typically developing kids. The only difference with kids on the spectrum is they might need a little more help, a little more practice, and a little more teaching.
But important, I think, that we all recognize that the question is still there, that people will say, can you teach these things? And resoundingly, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's not even up for debate. There literally is not even anything to discuss with that. That is clearly a yes. There are, I don't know, scores, maybe even hundreds of research studies on treatment for autism where social behaviors are some of the things that improve and that they're absolutely teachable.
Okay. Well, I think that's great hope for all of us. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and actually, I'm seeing that we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to talk to you about some of these things before we take a break, and then we're going to let you go because I know you've got things to do.
All right.
Our question of the day today was, what skill is your child having a hard time learning? And I'm going to kind of give you a breakdown of what the big categories were.
Okay.
Potty training was one of the big things that people were talking about, that it's really difficult. In particular, it sounded more like it was the pooping on the potty, and that getting their child to understand what was happening. One mom who said, he tells me when he needs to be changed, but he doesn't tell me when he has to go. Or even a mom saying that, we can set him there and it's aversive, doesn't want to poop on the potty.
Yeah, he's scared.
And obviously, we're not going to, be able to say, well, specifically with a specific child, that would be a disservice to the child. But are any tips that you can give us in terms of those kinds of things in general?
Yes. The first most important tip, I think, with potty training is sort of one of the most fundamental principles of ABA and of teaching for kids on the spectrum, and that is it takes more than you think it's going to. You need to be more consistent than you think. You need to practice more than you think you want to or is appropriate. You need to put more into it than you really have time to do. You need to make a sacrifice. So you need to maybe even pick one or two specific other things and say, I'm not going to do those things for the next week or two because I need to spend that time on working on X, Y, and Z. So in this case, toilet training. So, you know, you'd think like just giving your kid lots of motivation and talking to them and making it less scary and, you know, really encouraging them would be enough, right? Try that for a couple days and that should be enough. Well, it's not necessarily. For a lot of kids on the spectrum, especially when it comes to going number 2 on the toilet, it's not enough. They need repeated practice and they need lots of motivation. And even under those circumstances, it could take a month or two. So I've seen plenty of kids that were very successfully potty trained going number 1, so urinating on the potty, you know, within a couple days, you know, and these are kids with autism. And then, you know, even getting out of diapers, not having any accidents for weeks sometimes, and yet still they're afraid to go number 2 on the toilet. And even if you can't tell whether they're afraid or not, they just don't. And so some kids will actually even request a diaper to wear so they can poop in the diaper. Some kids will wait until bedtime because that's when they get a pull-up anyways, you know, because they're still sort of in the process of toilet training, and then they'll poop in the diaper in their bed. Other kids I've seen will hide it because they're so afraid of pooping on the toilet. They'll actually hide it and they'll wait until no one's watching them. And I've heard stories of kids pooping in a potted houseplant or, you know, in the closet where mom and dad won't see or behind a bookshelf or something, you know. So what all this comes down to is the kid's afraid of sitting on the toilet. The kid doesn't want to sit on the toilet, and the kid is afraid of you know, producing feces in the toilet. Doesn't want to go number 2.
We say poop. We're like okay with poop.
The kid's afraid of.
We talk about poop all the time.
all right. So what we see all the time is kids are genuinely afraid of pooping in the toilet. And I don't know why that is. I don't think anyone knows why that is. It could be they're afraid of falling in the toilet. Could be some aspect of control. They don't want to let it go. Who knows what it is?
There's a splash. There's a noise.
Right, a noise.
There's all kinds of things going on there. It could be any one of the above.
Yeah, some people talk about how it's sort of like a piece of you that's falling off. Maybe they don't totally get that it's supposed to fall off. It's not actually like your finger or your thumb or whatever. And it could be just that, you know, kids don't want to go number 2, and so they're going to hold it until the very last second. And whenever that last second happens to be, it's not necessarily when they happen to be sitting on the toilet. So all of those things, whichever it is or a combination of them, make it very challenging. And so what we've always recommended, what I've always seen work literally every single time, is frequent trips to the bathroom, frequent sits on the toilet, and overwhelmingly huge reinforcers for going number 2 in the toilet. What I've done in the past is literally an immediate trip to McDonald's to get an ice cream cone. Immediate, no matter what time of day, no matter what else is happening. If you poop in the toilet, you're going straight to McDonald's and you're getting an ice cream cone. And of course, it doesn't have to be that. There's nothing magical about ice cream cones. It just happen to be that kid's favorite thing, you know. So just an unreasonably large reinforcer.
So just putting them on the toilet again and again and again, hoping to catch it.
Yeah, hoping to catch it, exactly. And if the child does have receptive language that's developed enough to understand rules at all, then definitely tell them the rules. Even if they don't understand it, tell them anyways, just in case, because of course, as we said, you don't really know. So definitely saying like, if you poop in the toilet, then you get whatever their hugest reinforcer is. Huge. Frequent trips to the toilet, and also you may need to do reinforcement of just sitting on the toilet too. If they're really afraid of the toilet and the kid's running away and screaming and doesn't want to even sit, then you probably have to start with just reinforcing that. You might not have to pull out the big guns and use, you know, a trip to McDonald's just to sit on the toilet, but whatever reinforcers work for the kid. And start small. Maybe the first time it would be he only has to sit on the toilet for 1 second, and then he gets a reinforcer, and then gradually build up. You know, as long as any medical issues are taken care of too. So for example, if the kid has really big constipation, you probably need to introduce more fiber into his diet, more vegetables and fruits. If the kid has really bad diarrhea, there might be something else going on. And I'm no GI expert, but definitely take your kid to the pediatrician, take your kid to a GI doctor if necessary, and make sure that there's no issues going on there. But literally in every single case that I know that I've ever experienced, if all the medical situations are taken care of and you do this repeated trips to the toilet, reinforcing sitting on the potty, and an unreasonably large reinforcer for pooping in the toilet, it works. Because eventually it's a clear choice for the kid.
Right.
Keep holding it, keep going in your diaper, keep not getting what you want, or just let it go and get the coolest thing ever.
Right.
Right?
But being patient.
Yeah, and being
Setting aside the
persistent.
time.
It could easily take a month or two. You know, even with a very, very smart kid who's sharp as a tack, they may still wait you out for a month or two before they finally go in the toilet that first time. But when they do, man, you got to catch it and you got to reinforce it.
Okay, I think that's really good to know, because I think sometimes we want everything to be as immediate as possible, and to say, okay, I'm resigning myself to the fact that I'm going to be patient.
Right.
We are going to get there. I don't know. There's something about that. Then we settle down and we can do what we have to do as parents.
One more quick tip too is this thing with the unreasonably large reinforcer. It's easy. It's easy for me to say because I'm an ABA person. That's what we do. What we hear a lot from parents who haven't done that before is, well, okay, but I can't just give him a bowl of ice cream every time he poops on the toilet, right? And the answer to that is, right, of course not. Except, yeah, at first. And then once you reinforce the behavior a few times, that's the whole point of reinforcement, is you're not going to have to continue to do it forever. And you're not going to have to continue to do it at that large of a magnitude of reinforcement.
Scale it
So, yeah, scale it back. So, honestly, with things like that, the first few times that the kid contacts that contingency means he puts the pieces of the puzzle together that, wow, if I just poop in the toilet, then I get an ice cream cone. Contact that a few times and the behavior will start to occur more consistently. And then once the child's pooping in the toilet, let's say 3 times a week, then you can absolutely start scaling it back. And honestly, once the behavior is occurring consistently and the kid's not pooping in the diaper, then you can start scaling back the reinforcement much more rigorously. And honestly, within, a few weeks or a month or two, you won't have to reinforce it at all anymore. It will start to become natural.
Okay, so reasonably large to start with.
Unreasonably large
It
reinforcement.
has to be deliverable immediately.
Immediately,
So
yeah.
you don't want it to be something like Disneyland, so when you do it at 2 o'clock in the morning, you can't,
Or I'll buy you your Power Rangers thing next month or something. No, it has to
go
be
and
immediate.
buy the Power Ranger and have it in the closet so that you can pull it out. Has to be deliverable immediately, because we want to make sure we link that to the actual pooping in the...
And ideally, it should be a situation where there is literally zero opportunity to get that same reinforcer for any other behavior, no matter how good the behavior is. So if it's a particular kind of ice cream, that kid cannot have that ice cream for anything else, no matter what.
Okay, we're like, there's so many other things to talk about, and we're about out of time. So I'll tell you what, we'll talk about some of these next week. I'll make a list of these, and we'll make sure that we talk about these next week, Friday at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I thank you so much. You are always such a wealth of information.
I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm always thrilled when you're here, and I know that our viewers are as well. This show is going to end, and this week of shows is going to end, but you know that we just keep replaying episodes. And the conversation continues. You can get in touch with us in so many different ways. You can email us, and hopefully we've had the wonderful Matt Scheller working with us today, because our technical director Emily has been on vacation, a much needed vacation today. But Matt's going to cycle through some of the different things. There's a phone number you can call. You can talk to us on Facebook. You can phone us. There are lots of different ways you can tweet to us, and he'll cycle through some of those. We hope that you will participate in the conversation, because we're here to help and support you on this journey through autism, so you can be the most effective, efficient person on your child's team. We know how important that is to you, and we want to help you in that. But we don't read minds. I especially gave up mind reading to be an autism parent. So please don't make us guess. Tell us what's working for you, what you want to hear more about. Let us know what your questions are, what's on your mind, what you'd like to see more stories about. That's really what we want more than anything else, is to provide that for you. So be a part of the conversation. I hope it's Mother's Day on Sunday, and we haven't taken any time to talk about that, but I hope that you find something to do with your children this weekend that makes you enjoy this journey all the more, because it's such a privilege to be a parent to our kids, is it not? So find something that you can do with your child that's very reinforcing for you this weekend, right? We need to be reinforced too, right,
That's
Dr.
right.
Tarbox? Okay.
That's right.
So have a lovely Mother's Day. We'll be back here at 9 o'clock in the morning on Monday. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.